Wing Commander was a series of space sims that spanned the 1990s, telling the story of a war between the human-led Terran Confederation and a hostile alien race known as the Kilrathi. Starting from humble beginnings right at the Big 9-0 and expanding through a series of increasingly ambitious sequels throughout the decade and culminating in the release of a Hollywood movie in 1999, which the series never quite recovered from. Wing Commander was also host to a number of spin-offs and tie-in products, the most notable of which is the subject of this video, Wing Commander Privateer. Hi, this is Space Cadet Rewind, and I've been doing a whole series of videos like this, chronicling the history of the space sim, including the first two Wing Commander games. So if you like this video, maybe give those a watch. You'll probably like them too. And while you're at it, take a good long look at those like and subscribe buttons, then do whatever comes naturally. Unlike the movie, which sprung straight from series creator Chris Roberts' soul, Privateer was born from marketing. No, really. It started life in 1992 as an idea from developer Origin Systems' marketing department for a trading game set in the Wing Commander universe called Trade Commander. Roberts wasn't completely opposed to it, but it needed a little something. Just trading? There's gotta be more to it. Where's the action? So he sat down with Joel Manners, an up-and-coming designer who had done some mission design and QA work on previous Wing Commander titles, to workshop it. By the time they were done talking, they had whipped it up into something special. Previous Wing Commanders were what you might call Luke Skywalker games. All about the fantasy of being the hero who keeps his nose clean, does what he's told, and goes off to save the galaxy in his starfighter. Well, how about a Han Solo game? A game where you get to be a rough customer, navigating the criminal underworld in your freighter, taking the dangerous jobs or the dirty ones as long as the money's right, and maybe you have a heart of gold under it all, maybe not. That's for you to decide. And thus we have Wing Commander Privateer, an open galaxy space sim that has you seeking fame and fortune in the dangerous but opportunity-laden Gemini sector, wherever and however you want it. Similarly to Wing Commander 2, a lot of people seem to be under the mistaken impression that Chris Roberts designed this game. Well, he was there for its inception, and I'm sure he checked in from time to time to make sure it was on track. His credit reads Executive Producer, which is not what you'd call a hands-on role. He was, after all, still busy with Strike Commander, which would have been well into the depths of development hell by this point. The task of leading the team was left to Manners, and the game that released in September 1993 was the result. Starting the game up, we're introduced to the Gemini sector and our main character. It's one of the two cutscenes of any note in the game, and establishes things well enough, so let's enjoy it.
And what is it, huh? Is it a smuggler far off the normal space lanes? Maybe a bad smuggler with some nice contraband.
Sorry, boys. I'm just a tourist with a frag nav console. Could you tell me where I am?
Deep in trouble, little tourist. Prepare to be boarded.
Not a chance, pal. Prepare to go to hell.
Who are you that flies so good? Are you insane?
No, it's just got a load of cargo in the hold and a load of bills to pay at home.
And I the same. You shouldn't kill me just for attacking you.
I don't mind that you tried to kill me, but protecting myself against your type gets expensive, and I'm on a budget.
After that, we're asked to name our hero? According to a 1992 press release that nobody at the time read, his official name is Grayson Burroughs, which sounds like two last names to me, but I hate coming up with names, so sure, why not? And with that, we find ourselves alone on a dingy asteroid mining base, admiring our ship.
What a piece of junk!
This slapped-together space bus is called the Tarsus, and its purpose in life is to motivate you to go out there and get something better. Things don't really start to sink in until you step onto this bad boy and take it out for a spin. Compared to the ships we've flown in Wing Commander games up to this point, this thing is ponderously slow, outfitted with pathetically weak weapons, and perhaps worst of all, the interior is so cramped you can barely see out of it. This genuinely does make it hard to tell what's going on sometimes, especially as a new player. Starting you out with a weak character and crap gear to serve as contrast for all the cool upgrades you're gonna get later on is a time-tested and proven effective video game trope, but they might be laying it on a little thick here, don't you think? The funniest one to me is that they start you off with a black and white radar. What a blast from the past that is, huh? When was the last time you had to upgrade from black and white to color? The Game Boy? So, step 1, find a better ship. And if we wander around on this base for a bit, we can find that we're in luck. There's a dealership right here.
I hate to break it to you, but we've checked your account, and you don't have enough credits to buy this ship. She sure is a fine ship, though, isn't she? Listen, I want to make a sale. You want to make a purchase. Let's look at the facts. You know the retail of this ship. I can use your ship for trade-in, plus your extras. Including your cash on hand, that still leaves you short. Go get some more cash and come back when you're ready to deal, okay? And don't feel embarrassed. These things happen.
Oh, I see. Okay, step 2, find a better ship. Step 1, make some money. So, how to make money? We could try the bar. I saw Han Solo do that once and it worked out pretty well for him. Well, we can get some rumors from the bartender.
I hear there's a real operator hiring out of New Detroit right now. His name's Sandoval. I don't know exactly what he's up to, but with the rumors floating around this guy, he must be up to something big. I hear he's got some kind of valuable art piece he's trying like hell to dump, probably hot. If you ask me, the guy's a high-ender, and you should look into getting a piece of his action.
But I don't think we're near New Detroit, and I don't see anyone else to talk to, so let's bounce. Here's what we're looking for, the mission computer. With this, we can take on some randomly generated jobs, up to 3 at a time out of 6 that it'll show you. I've got a bone to pick with this. See, what a new player might not know is that right now the base we're on is in the Troy system, and we're kind of trapped here. The reason for that is that if we want to leave, we need to find a jump point and engage our jump drive to warp out. But here's the thing, we don't have a jump drive. That's an upgrade that you need to buy, and we can't afford it yet. This has the effect of containing new players within the Troy system until they've earned enough money to escape. This is fine, good even. Newbie islands are a thing for a reason. What's not fine is that before that happens, a good portion of the missions spat out by this computer are straight up impossible to complete, because they want you to jump to other systems. Now, as an experienced player stricken with the curse of knowledge, it's easy to say, well, there's your problem. But a new player who's still getting their bearings and is in the process of absorbing a ton of information at once is very likely to get caught up by this, especially because there's no way to see where you are in relation to all these places while on a base. Like, you'd think that right now, when you're choosing which missions to take on, would be the best time to break open a map and plan out your trip, but no. While there is a map, for some reason you can't access it from here, only after you've launched your ship into space. To be fair, there are warnings about this buried in the manual, but it just grinds my gears that they obviously saw that this was a problem people were running into in playtesting, hence the warnings, but they never thought to solve it in the game. Like, just have the missions refuse you if you don't have what you need to complete them, or better yet, don't even show them to the player. Well, whatever, let's just take a couple missions that we can complete and give those a go. As mentioned, the missions are procedurally generated from a template. Do objective type X involving enemy faction Y in location Z. It's a very simple system, but versatile enough to support all that a game like this needs, provided they can supply enough meaningfully different objectives, enemy types, and locations to keep it interesting. In this case, I found a mission to attack a retro and another to scout for a pirate. Missions will usually, but not always, tell you which faction you're expected to fight. This is important to take note of, not only because it affects how difficult the mission might be, but how it might influence your standings with the various factions of the Gemini system. But let's not worry about that just yet. Attack is the most straightforward mission type. Just go to a specified location and fight someone there. Scout is like attack, except there might not be anyone there to fight, but you get paid either way. Which might seem like a pretty sweet deal, but it does come with a correspondingly lower payout. The first time I launched my ship to do a set of missions, the thing that really struck me was how neatly and completely the conventions of Wing Commander have been mapped over to this game. It's not just the look and feel, everything feels familiar. You press the same button you always did to open up your nav computer, which looks and controls exactly like it always did. Once you've chosen your destination, you can use the autopilot to get there, which works like it always did. The benefits of this kind of thing for the development team are obvious. They get to reuse a whole bunch of code and expertise to deliver way more polished gameplay than they would otherwise, but what might not be as obvious is that players benefit just as much from it. Being able to go anywhere and do whatever you want is cool and all, but it's also a big responsibility. Open-world space trading games like Elite are very complex and intimidating affairs, and can be very frustrating before you get to grips with them, and also after you get to grips with them. But with Privateer, as long as you've played at least one Wing Commander game before, you get a massive leg up on the learning process. All that built-up muscle memory and systems knowledge transfers right over, and that's a huge part of the game that you don't have to worry about learning, so you can focus on the new stuff. As a result, this can be by far the easiest game like this to get into as long as you've played at least one of the other games in the series before. But alright, enough talk. Go to Nav 2, kill a retro. Well, it turns out Nav 2 is the mining base we just launched out of, so that's convenient. But just what is a retro anyway? The Church of Man is a peaceful religious order with an Amish-like philosophy, attempting to live off the land while using as little technology as possible. Well, if that's the case, why are they shooting at me? Retros are a radical splinter faction who have taken to heart the words of Kevin Chang. It's not enough for the Church of Man to live without technology. All those dirty non-believers need to as well, by any means necessary. Some unknown benefactor has outfitted them with a fleet of cheap fighter craft, which they use to terrorize the Gemini sector.
Your destruction is the will of God.
Attacking any spaceborne traveler unfortunate enough to cross their path. Now, these guys are obviously meant to evoke fundamentalist Christians, but don't get it twisted. If you pay close attention, they don't worship the Christian God, who is just called God. It's the God of Man. Totally different. Retros are the easiest of the game's 7 factions. To be honest, the word faction is a bit generous, as it brings to mind a whole suite of different enemy types, when the retros have one. And this starts to hint at one of my problems with this game. Some of the other factions are a bit more fleshed out, but if you consider that this is the lower bound, maybe set your expectations accordingly. Sometimes you'll find them in groups. Others, like this one, will be alone. But every single retro in the game flies a Talon light fighter. Poorly. Fighting this guy kind of highlights an interesting difference between this game and the previous ones. While all that stuff about your experience carrying over is true, we are flying a different kind of ship than the ones we had before. It was always some flavor of fighter craft, always at least somewhat fast and nimble and lightly armored. The second game did introduce bombers, but even those still trended towards being faster than this big chonker we have here. It's a more appropriate kind of ship for this kind of game, both thematically and otherwise. The Talon represents the low end of the kind of ships we flew and fought before. Flying death traps, comparable to Luke's X-Wing, optimized for speed and power over safety. The Tarsus, like the Millennium Falcon, has other priorities, like being big enough to hold some cargo and tough enough to take some hits. And make no mistake, you will be taking some hits. Something you're gonna have to get used to is that with a ship as big and slow as this, you're not going to be dodging much at all. Even if you use an afterburner, which, by the way, I don't have because I forgot you don't start with one. But even with one, a ship like the Tarsus is simply too large and slow to get out of the way once an enemy ship starts shooting. The best you can do most of the time is manage which side of your shields takes the hit. Now, this is not an oversight. They did account for this by giving you enough shields and armor to survive these early encounters as long as you can place your shots reasonably well. This is a stark difference from previous games where you were constantly on the razor's edge, always a split-second's mistake or unlucky break away from death. I criticized the first game for its extremely low time to kill, leading to sudden deaths that felt arbitrary, but a low time to kill is appropriate for keeping a simple jump in and jump out action game exciting. I still think they could have chilled out a little, but they were on the right side of the spectrum. For something that is as much RPG as it is action game, the opposite side makes more sense. Trading in a little excitement for a reduction in potential frustration that might crop up during a long play session, and giving a bit more time for decision making and feats of skill to make a difference. And that's where Privateer sits, at least for now, with very high time to kill for both the player and their enemies. It's maybe even a bit excessive. This first fight was a shameful display that dragged on for a ridiculous amount of time, with neither me nor the Retro able to overcome each other's shield regeneration until I finally managed to seal the deal after 3 solid minutes of combat. I even followed the advice often given to new players and shelled out for some better weapons with my starting cash, except this ended up backfiring when it turned out the Tarsus in its current state isn't able to effectively power them. That's the other side of the equation. Skill always plays a part, but equally, if not more important, is the numbers game. This has always been the case. I've made much out of the fact that the difficulty of any given mission in this series varies wildly based on the ship you fly it with. The difference now is that it's my responsibility to keep up with the Joneses and pick my battles when I can't. It's a welcome change. If I'm gonna have to deal with it regardless, I'd rather be the one in charge than have to just sit there and take whatever they deal out to me. Despite how limited they are, the Retros might just be my favorite faction to fight. This mainly comes down to their combat dialogue, which is just really funny.
Can it be? Has the god of man abandoned us?
Especially when you interrupt them at inopportune times.
Die by the very weapons you adore! Traitor to humanity!
They're also great because you never have to feel bad about killing them. All of the other factions are potential allies if you play your cards right, even the Kilrathi. But for the Retros, being fanatics fundamentally opposed to our very way of life, peace was never an option. This also applies to their relationship with the rest of humanity, so each one you kill will make you just a little bit more popular with all of the other human factions. The other mission was to check out Nav Point 8, which may or may not have a pirate. Turns out it does. Pirates, as a faction, are a loose amalgamation of everyone other than the Retros who have run afoul of Confederation law. You've got smugglers who trade in illegal narcotics and slaves, literal pirates who attack freighters to steal their cargo, mobsters who engage in all of the above in addition to all the other things mobsters do, and so on. Given what a wide net I just cast there, you might think there would be a bit more ship variety going on here, but remember what I said about setting your expectations? Just like the retros, the pirates only get one ship. But it gets worse. Not only is it one ship, it's the same ship! Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. This pirate, like all pirates, is flying a Talon light fighter. I feel like I'm going insane. It does at least differentiate itself from the retro one with a black coat of paint and a different, much more decked out loadout. More guns, better engines and shields, and a pilot who actually does some proper dogfighting maneuvers instead of just suicidally charging you over and over again. But even a souped up Talon is still a Talon, and my aim's getting a little better already. Alright, both missions complete. Let's return to base so we can save our progress and count our winnings. But wait, did you notice something? Or rather, the lack of something? Where is the acknowledgement that I completed 2 missions? I think that if you are purely a player of games, this is not the kind of thing you are likely to ever actively think about, but this kind of mission results screen stuff is actually very important. For new players, this is a source of confusion. Did you complete the mission or somehow do something wrong and fail it? As an experienced player, I know what to look for. Before landing, make sure all the objectives in the mission section of your navigation computer are grayed out. After landing, make sure you remember how many credits you had before and check the missions completed counter on your PDA. But those are workarounds. Even for a veteran, it's a missed opportunity to have a moment of satisfaction or catharsis, common to so many games. It's such a bizarre omission. When I try to think back through all the hundreds of games I've played in my lifetime, I really struggled to come up with any that had discrete missions the way this one does, that didn't have at least some kind of way of calling out that you've done the thing the video game wants you to and have been rewarded for it. I talked up how well this game integrated the conventions of Wing Commander into this new style of gameplay, but it's not like this series is a stranger to the concept of a mission debriefing. If they wanted to stay in keeping with the cinematic flair the series was known for, the way to do it would be to have someone call you up on a video screen and thank you for your service. But if that was too much work for whatever reason, how about just having the PDA come up when you land and say, 2 missions completed, 10,000 credits deposited. Just print a message at the top of the screen, anything. But alright, rant over. We've got some spending money now, but how to spend it? Getting ahead isn't just about having a better ship, it's also about what kind of equipment you put on it. So let's check out the repair and upgrades room, which you get to from the ship dealer for some reason. 10,000 credits is enough to buy a jump drive, but where's the rush? Something tells me if I just skip town with my ship the way it is, I'll get eaten alive out there. There are a bunch of very helpful one-offs, but what are undoubtedly the most impactful things to buy are the engine and shield upgrades. These are split up into levels from 1 to 5, with the highest levels running you as much as an entire ship on their own. But we don't have to worry about that for now, because each ship has a maximum upgrade level it can support, and the Tarsus only goes up to 2. Between them, engines come first, because, well, it's complicated. Okay, so contrary to what you might assume, upgrading your engines does not make you go faster, at least not directly. What it does instead is make the shared pool of energy that powers your guns and afterburners recharge faster. Higher level engines let you boost around and shoot more power-hungry guns for longer without having to wait to recharge. This is further complicated by your shields. Each successive shield upgrade level represents a massive increase in survivability, but also draws more power, decreasing the regeneration rate of that energy pool. So if you buy shields that are too much for your engines to handle, you might be able to survive a lot of hits, but your ability to return fire or move fast to get away will be crippled, so you'll die anyway. That is why engines come first. Even with the level 1 upgrade, it's still not enough to power these Mason blasters I bought to my satisfaction, so I decided to go with 2 of the starting laser gun, which I can basically spam with impunity now. And how about an afterburner while I'm at it, which gives you a boost of speed in exchange for some energy. There's also the tungsten armor upgrade, which doubles your armor plating for so cheap it's practically free. No reason not to get that. And that's kind of the loop with this game. You do some missions, buy some upgrades if you can afford them, and repeat. Of the remaining mission types that can reasonably be done without a jump drive, there's patrol and defense. Patrol is like search, but for every nav point in a system. It kind of feels like doing a regular old Wing Commander 1 or 2 mission. Going back to that black and white radar for a second, it's not a big deal when the only other ship in the area is your enemy target. It's when there are also friendly or neutral ships in the mix that it becomes crippling. If you want to avoid sparking an interplanetary incident, you kind of have to just sit there for a moment and go, is that guy shooting at me? No? Wait, are you shooting at me? Hey, I think he's shooting at me! Unfortunately, the next available upgrade costs about 50,000 credits, so I'll have to put that on the list for later. Factions that are hostile will attack each other, and you still get credit even if the Confederation military blows up the pirate you were supposed to kill, so you could always just wait it out if you're not sure. Defense is like attack, but it always takes place at the location of a base. So that first attack mission I did, that just happened to take place at this base, effectively was a defense. These are actually kind of annoying because docking happens automatically when you get within a certain distance of a base in this game. If you hit the invisible trigger point, you're landing whether you wanted to or not, at which point space is unloaded, potentially failing any mission you had in the process. Of course, the AI doesn't have to worry about this, so they'll often inadvertently end up trying to lure you into the docking zone like they're a goddamn Rathalos in old Monster Hunter. You get a radio message warning you when this is about to happen, so you have to veer away to try to reset the encounter in a more favorable direction when this happens. Alright, this is the part where I have to reveal a shocking surprise twist. This isn't the first time I played this game. That's because I played the entire series before I even thought about making a YouTube video. I mean, it's not like that was really a secret, it just never came up. But anyway, the reason I have to bring this up is that the first time around I didn't do what I'm about to do here. I did buy a jump drive, but I didn't use it to go exploring the outer reaches of the Gemini system. Instead, I just kinda hung around Troy and its neighboring systems grinding out credits for a couple more hours. I did this because I didn't know what was out there, so I wanted to be prepared, and the money seemed to be coming in at a pretty good pace, so why not? By the time I left Troy, I had something pretty close to a top-of-the-line ship, and I ended up blitzing through the story with minimal resistance, in a way that didn't seem quite right. It felt like I short-circuited the intended journey through the game. So what I want to do this time is venture out a little earlier, try starting the story with something close to the starting ship and upgrade as I go, which seems closer to what they intended for you to do. So here's the plan. I gotta buy the jump drive. Obviously, that's step 1. Step 2 is, well... Did I mention that the mission computer isn't the end-all be-all? There's also the merchant and mercenary guilds. These charge a one-time membership fee to join, but once you've paid, you get access to an additional set of missions with a focus towards the guild's specialty, which pay better than the ones from the standard computer. It's only 1,000 credits to get into the Merchants Guild, and I happened to notice that they had 3 separate cargo missions to take things to New Detroit, each with a massive reward of around 13,000 credits. Cargo missions give you some cargo, and ask you to deliver it to a specified base. Pretty straightforward. They are a little jank, though, in that they disappear the next time you land at a base. If it's the right base, you succeed and get your reward. Otherwise, the mission fails and the cargo just disappears. This means you can't take multiple cargo missions with different destinations, even if they're nearby each other, because the second you land at the first base, all the cargo that was intended for the others will just up and vanish. However, if all 3 missions have the same destination, then you're golden. If I manage to pull this off, I'll get a cool 40,000 credits. And come to think of it, wasn't that Sandoval guy based out of New Detroit? It's a genius plan, nothing could possibly go wrong. Jumping works just like it did in Wing Commander 2, except now you can actually see the jump point as this pulsating blue orb, which is a thoughtful addition. Get to the point and press the J key to be whisked away to a neighboring system in exchange for some fuel. Fuel is only used for jumping in this game and is replenished for free every time you land at a base, so it's only there to limit you to a maximum of 6 jumps before you need to land somewhere to refuel. Each jump point leads to a specific counterpart in a nearby system, so traveling long distance is a matter of looking at the map to see which connections you need to take and then traversing them. Our first stop is Pender's Star, a system with precisely one notable feature: an asteroid field located directly between where you start and where you want to go. Yeah, those are still in here, and say it with me, they work exactly like they always did. Unfortunately. Well, I say that because they're a strictly unpleasant thing to deal with in the moment, but I actually do appreciate what they bring to the experience overall, which is to say, they add texture to your journey. Every space sim ever made has had to reckon with 2 simple facts. A spaceship is a vehicle that travels through space, and space is a vast expanse of emptiness. The reality of space travel is that 99.9% of it is spent uneventfully waiting to get to your destination. But that's just a tiny bit at odds with the concept of a video game that is supposed to be entertaining. It's been a running theme on this channel. Over and over again, from game to game, I find myself getting into situations where I'm just sitting there with nothing interesting happening while I wait for my ship or some other ship to get to its destination. While there have been attempts to address this contradiction, there is no universally accepted best practice for this, so every game does it differently. The solution in previous Wing Commanders was to cut out travel time entirely. The cool thing about spaceships is the part where they shoot lasers, they say. So all that waiting around can just be edited out, like in the movies. But that's not an option for a game about living in space. Games are under no obligation to adhere to reality wherever it would be inconvenient, but when we're talking about a game about being like Han Solo, traveling unfathomably long distances is part of the fantasy. Games like this are under an obligation to do something to depict the journey. When they don't, you get examples like Starfield, where all the trials and tribulations of traveling across the cosmos are reduced to a loading screen. Not so bad for a simple action game, but absolutely ruinous for an RPG that is ostensibly about the grandeur of space. Elite's solution is the most true to life I've seen, in that you really do just spend a bunch of time traveling through an empty void waiting for something to happen. Just a tiny fraction of what it would actually be. It's extremely boring and monotonous, but I do at least feel like I've been through the ringer every time, so technically an improvement over Starfield. What Privateer does is much better. By breaking the journey down into a bunch of individual steps that you need to take, they make it feel like you're actually doing something. Now, when you look closely at what you're actually doing to traverse each sector, it's pretty thin. You're just finding the nav point that leads to your next connection and hitting autopilot. A less charitable reading of this would call that busy work. And yeah, there's room for improvement here, but even as basic as it is, when I arrive at my destination, it leaves me feeling like I went on a journey. The other thing it accomplishes, maybe a bit less successfully, is making the Gemini sector feel like a place. By having you pass through the various systems, each with its own unique layout and features, you would hopefully get a sense of their character. And you kinda do if you actually have business at one. Landing on a base or having to do a patrol are good opportunities to get to know them, but when you're just passing through, it's a bit harder when your interactions amount to select nav point, autopilot, jump. They have 2 tools to combat this. The first and most obvious is random encounters with other ships. which I'll get to in a moment, but the second is asteroid fields. Love 'em or hate 'em, they do grab your attention and force you to deal with them one way or another. Luckily, working just like they always did also extends to the methods for taking the edge off of them. The autopilot is just simulating your ship traveling in a straight line to its destination, so if you fly out in a perpendicular direction for long enough, you can get a path that takes you to the opposite jump point without going through the asteroid field. Or, failing that, you can do the technique where you boost through while bobbing up and down to trick the spawning system. Although it should be noted, this doesn't guarantee you won't get hit, it just greatly reduces the chance of it. Even if you use these techniques to deal with asteroid fields, they are still something you have to deal with, so they stick in your mind. I mentioned that I had played this game before. Well, that was about 2 years ago now. I didn't remember most of the systems in Gemini other than the big unique ones like New Detroit and Oxford. Pender's Star though, I remembered that name. And that's why, even though my reaction on seeing it again was to go, ugh, this fucking place, I can still appreciate it. Just, from a distance. There'll be plenty of asteroid fields I can't skip like this, don't you worry. As I alluded to, asteroids aren't the only thing standing in my way. Every time you enter a system, the game randomly rolls to determine which ships will appear at each nav point, although randomly is maybe selling it a bit short. There was actually a lot of thought and effort that went into this. Each nav point has its own individual encounter table with different probabilities for given ships to spawn. This allows the Gemini sector to be an unpredictable place, but with a bias towards making sense, and each individual system having its own flavor. For example, you're a lot more likely to find militia or confed patrols in populated systems. Conversely, while it technically is possible for a pirate to show up right as you're leaving an official base, you'll probably find them out on the fringes, away from prying eyes. Especially at jump points, where they presumably lie in wait to catch unsuspecting merchants carrying valuable cargo. Case in point, there's some unwelcome guests waiting for me at the jump point. The interesting thing about encountering hostile ships while out and about in this game is that if you're not specifically being paid to kill them, you don't really get any financial reward for fighting them. In Elite, you would get an automatic bounty payment for each pirate or Thargoid you dispatched, but there's nothing like that here. As a result, it's often preferable for both your safety and convenience to run away. Of course, that's assuming your ship is fast enough to outrun your pursuers, which isn't likely with this rusty bucket of bolts. However, I'm even less confident in my ability to fight off multiple pirates at once, and besides, I don't have to make it very far, just to the jump point, so I make a break for it. You may be wondering, if all you have to do is make it to the jump point and then you're home free, what's to stop you from doing that every time? Well, this. When you jump, the camera switches to third person and you get this 4-second long cutscene in which your jump drive spins up before actually making the jump. What might not be immediately obvious is that you are vulnerable during this time. Worse, since you're stopped dead in your tracks, you're a sitting duck. However, depending on the situation, it might still be a risk worth taking. Luckily for me, the pirates were distracted fighting someone else, giving me the opportunity to slip through unscathed. That luck ran out when I tried the same thing just a couple systems over, with spectacularly bad results. Things can go very badly over the course of those 4 seconds, to say nothing of the seconds preceding them. It's okay though, because I was just in the process of realizing that my little trip was doomed from the start regardless. I had forgotten to buy a map of Potter Quadrant. Amateur mistake, I know. See, the Gemini sector is split up into quadrants, and you have to buy maps for each of them. If you find yourself in a quadrant without its accompanying map, not only will you be missing an overall view of how the systems connect to each other, but more importantly, the nav points within each system, leaving you unable to use autopilot, set a destination, or do much of anything other than manually fly yourself to the nearest visible planet so you can buy the map. The whole thing seems like a racket to me, but it's only 5,000 credits to buy a complete map of the Gemini sector, and then you never have to think about it again, so it's tough to stay mad for long. Though it does make me question why they went to the effort of implementing this whole system in the first place, only to let you buy your way out of it for such a trivial amount. What actually does continually annoy me is the awful UI that makes these maps unnecessarily hard to read. I already mentioned that you can't look at the map when you're not flying your ship for some reason, but it's the in-flight experience that really drives me nuts. When you're looking at an individual quadrant, it doesn't seem so bad. You can see the lines that connect all the systems, and you can click on a system to see what kind of bases are in it, which is helpful. It's when you need to plan a trip to another quadrant that it falls apart. Pop quiz, hotshot. Say you want to get to Sherwood from the south. What's your connection? Is it New Detroit or 41GS? Or maybe it's Troy? Pollux? The obvious way to convey this information would be to simply show it. You know, have an overall map of the Gemini sector that lets you click into each quadrant, or maybe have some buttons that let you move from quadrant to quadrant, which would convey a sense of how they're situated relative to each other, but that's not what you get. Instead, we have this up arrow button that cycles through the quadrants one by one, and yes, that's really the only way to do it. The one thing they do give us is that all the connections from the system you're currently in get lit up, including the ones that go off into other quadrants, which is nice, but it doesn't help when you're trying to figure out if that's where you need to go in the first place. Now, if you keep staring at this for long enough, you can probably figure out that the answer is Troy. But why does it have to be such a pain in the ass in the first place? Why can't we just see how these things relate to each other spatially on this map? The situation is bad enough that a significant number of the people who played this game back in the day ended up making their own map with pencil and paper, and there's lots of maps you can find online to put on your second monitor nowadays. So, you know, it's a solved problem, I guess, but need I remind you, I paid for this. You have to buy them in this weird little upstairs section tucked away in the corner of the repairs and upgrades room of the ship dealer. It almost feels like they're ashamed of it, as they should be. But alright, bought the map, got my flight plan locked in, and this time no one bothered me after I got through Pender's Star. Welcome to the cyberpunk hellhole known as New Detroit. Most of the bases you can land on are generic, falling into one of a few categories. Mining bases, refineries, agricultural worlds, or pleasure planets. There are, however, a few more special bases that are a bit more unique, like this one. It's mostly identical to a refinery in function, but it looks like Blade Runner, so that's cool. It also has someone we can talk to in the bar.
Welcome to New Detroit. You look like a man who's hungry for work.
Among other things. You hiring?
Indeed I am. A simple delivery of iron. Strictly legit.
I've heard that song before, Mr.
Sandoval. Ernesto Sandoval.
Then I'll be your pilot.
I have something here that I want to show you.
What is it? Some sort of sculpture?
It's an alien artifact. Extremely valuable. Soon, I'll be selling it for a considerable sum. If you accept my mission, I'll let you hold on to it as collateral. You'll run iron from here to the Liverpool refinery in Newcastle. Once there, dock and allow my men to retrieve the cargo. Return here with my artifact and I'll pay you a 15,000 feet, along with 5,000 for the artifact's return. Do we have a deal?
This seems extremely sketchy, but he is giving us collateral, and Newcastle is pretty close by, so what the hell. The delivery went off without a hitch, but on the way back I took on a mission to fight a Kilrathi, which turned out to be a drouthy fighter like the ones in Wing Commander 2. And to give you an idea of how the power scaling shakes out, my Tarsus is pretty far out of its league against this thing. However, I was able to whittle it down over a very long period of time and claim victory. A very hollow victory, considering that I'm pretty sure I ended up paying more in repairs than I got from the mission reward, but at least I can say I did it.
Ah, you look just like your picture. Too bad.
After a few drinks, you'll change your mind, Miss,
Call me Taylor. I used to do business with Sandoval.
I'd rather talk about my face. What's wrong with it, anyway?
Nothing, except the police have it plastered all over the hollows. Sandoval is dead, and they want you for questioning. Tough break, but I'm here to offer you work now that you're between jobs. I need you to make 4 special deliveries for me.
By special, you mean risky and illegal.
And lucrative. The first run pays 10,000 credits.
That's lucrative? Thanks, but I got my own leads to follow up.
Right, the artifact. You have it, but you don't know anything about it. I could fill you in after you fly my missions. How about it, Captain? Your cargo will consist of nothing but plastics, completely legal. Supposedly you'll be running it to Newcastle, but actually, you'll divert to Oakham, a hidden pirate base, and dock. You won't have any trouble with the pirates because you work for me.
At least she's upfront about how shady this is. At this point, with the credits I have from my big score on the way into New Detroit, plus the Sandoval job, I'm getting kinda close to being able to buy a decent ship, so I decide to keep saving instead of buying any upgrades, and take Taylor up on her offer. If it's as easy as she says, what's the harm? True to her word, Oakham is an example of the secret 5th category of base, the pirate base. These have the outward appearance of a mining base, but produce a different suite of goods, including illegal ones like drugs and slaves. They exist off the grid, so to speak, meaning they show up as an empty nav point on your map, so you'll either need to have someone tell you about their location or investigate suspicious systems to find them. The pirates in Pentonville will leave us alone thanks to Taylor's influence, but there is one thing standing in our way. Pirate bases are always in the middle of an asteroid field, presumably so that any suspicious authorities will go, fuck this, and leave. Which is, understandable. This ensures that dealing with pirates is always a pain in the ass, no matter what.
Now your next job is to run a load of brilliance to Hector Mining Base in Troy. The run pays 15,000 credits. Too much for such an easy job if you ask me.
It's at this point that I made the extremely wise decision not to save until after accepting Taylor's second job, a choice that definitely isn't going to come back to bite me anytime soon. This is our first taste of smuggling, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bitter. So, I've been glossing over it up to this point, and I'm going to continue avoiding the subject for now, but just know that there are commodities you can buy and sell at different prices depending on where you go, just like in Elite and other games of this type. Among those commodities are illegal ones, which might get you in trouble with the law if you're caught holding them. The contraband mechanic is not really explained at all in the game or even in the manual, leading to a lot of confusion over how it works. Although, I think if it had merely been unexplained, there would have been a lot less confusion. The problem is that this mission, which has a good chance of being your introduction to the concept, it certainly was for me, is actively misleading. Taylor has loaded our cargo bay up with the illegal drug Brilliance, which could potentially get us in trouble. So, how does that work? Well, as we travel through the Gemini sector, we are likely to come across Confederation or planetary militia patrols who tell us this.
Maintain speed and course for contraband search.
They make it sound like this is going to be a whole process, but the scan finishes as soon as they're done talking. That's not the confusing part. The confusing part is this.
No contraband detected. You may proceed.
Are you sure about that, officer? Well, alright, if you say so. But when we get back to our old stomping grounds...
Contraband detected. All units close and terminate. You cannot win. Withdraw or be destroyed.
I mean, yeah, that's the idea. If you'll just let me. No? Okay. So, what's going on here? Maybe there's a percentage chance of evading the scan and I was just getting really lucky at first? Well, upon trying the mission again, and again, and again, the results are the same every time. So maybe Brilliance is only illegal in some systems, but not others? That or the RNG seed used for this is fixed for some reason. Knowing what I know now...
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
First of all, there are no regional differences in legality. The things that are considered contraband are the same everywhere, and there are 3 such things, by the way. Some people seem to have gotten the idea that tobacco and plaything magazines, which are also produced by pirate bases, might be considered contraband, but nope, it's just Brilliance, Ultimate, which I think is supposed to be a more potent form of Brilliance, and slaves. There's also, as far as I can tell, no element of chance to being scanned. If you have contraband in your cargo hold, they'll find it 100% of the time. So why all the false negatives then? Well, it's because as far as the game logic is concerned, that cargo isn't actually contraband. Elements of the mission are faked using scripting. Those guys who keep catching me in Troy aren't there by chance. They're spawned in by the mission and arbitrarily told to send those radio messages and become hostile. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except because it's about a mechanic that is so vaguely defined, it ends up propagating misinformation about that mechanic to disastrous effect. It even extends to the mission itself. Because of that misinformation, I was misled into wasting my time believing that I had a chance, that if I just kept rolling the dice enough times, eventually I could make it to Hector without getting caught, when in reality it was impossible. And yeah, in case you couldn't tell, this mission presented a bit of a wall for me. The problem is that these scripted cops are flying stiletto fighters, which just so happen to be the fastest human ships in the game. There's no way to outrun these things in a Tarsus, it's just not happening. That leaves fighting them, which is not something I want to do unless I absolutely have to, considering what it would do to my reputation. Even then, I'm not confident in my chances, especially since the encounter happens at the end of what is becoming an annoyingly long trip. If I could buy some upgrades, make this Tarsus the best it could be, then maybe, but I'm afraid that's not an option. There's no ship dealer on this base, which means no upgrade room. By accepting the job, I've locked myself into doing it. The drugs are already on my ship, and just like with a normal cargo mission, landing anywhere other than the destination results in automatic failure. So I can't just go somewhere else to load up. Yeah, so not every base has the amenities. Who knew? Well, I did. I just didn't think I'd need them until it was too late. This is conceptually fine, although it's a bit annoying that there's no way to tell what a given base is going to have ahead of time, with the sole exception of pirate bases, where, yeah, it makes sense that you wouldn't be able to find a licensed dealer or guild representative. It's not that big a deal that you can land on a base only to find out that you can't buy a new ship. What is a major problem is that this also means you can't buy upgrades, restock your ordnance, or even repair your ship. The real issue isn't that some bases don't have the ship dealer, it's that these things shouldn't be reliant on the ship dealer to begin with. My current predicament might seem like a uniquely unfortunate one, but it's not that hard to imagine a different set of circumstances leading to a similar situation. What if you find yourself in a sector without the map and fly to the nearest planet, as I suggested earlier, only to find out there's no ship dealer when you land? No upgrade room means no map room, and now you're stranded without any landmarks to lead you back to the jump points. And don't try to come at me like this makes any sense in-universe either. You're telling me these guys have a spaceport meant to facilitate interstellar trade, but don't have the means to repair a ship? Come on. This is what happens if you try to come crawling back to Taylor afterward, by the way.
Okay, sweetheart, what's my next assignment?
You're a bad pony. I can't afford to bet on you anymore. You screwed up the last mission. I'm cutting my losses. You'll have to take your chances with Insys. I'm out of here.
But I need information on that artifact, Taylor.
You should have thought of that before you choked up. Later.
And that's it for this version of Grayson, as he is now permanently cut off from the rest of the story missions. This is one of those things that everybody can make of what they will, but personally, I'm not a fan. Luckily, I kept an earlier save from before I met Taylor. To an extent, this is what I was asking for. My goal was to see what the experience of starting the story early on was, and we saw that the first couple of missions are easy. The hardest part was getting to New Detroit in the first place, but we very quickly ran into a wall. Time to do some freelance work. Except, you ever get the feeling that you don't belong? Things are tough out here in the big city. Taking the same retro and pirate clearing jobs I did in Troy for the same pay results in battles with 2 or more ships, which I am not able to reliably deal with. Even my attempt to run back to Troy with my tail between my legs ended in failure. It's starting to feel like I'm trapped in New Detroit. But hey, this is the game for smugglers and vagabonds, remember? If you don't get yourself embroiled in some cockamamie get-rich-quick scheme that backfires on you almost immediately, are you even playing it right? I would argue that no, you are not. But it's fine.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
All I have to do is run some easy cargo missions and then I can buy my way out of this pit. Speaking of which, let's talk about this guy.
You want to buy an Orion? I'm telling you, you do. You do a lot of risky runs. You look the type. Let me tell you something. The Orion may not be fast, but she's a regular tank. She has the thickest armor and the best shields of any ship on the open market. Sure, the cargo space is limited, but she'll keep you and your cargo safe. Get it? This ship has something for everybody. Merchants have cargo protection, and mercs can fly with confidence that they'll come back in one piece. The Orion has racks for 2 guns, a weapon or tractor beam, and a rear turret. A great buy at only 75,000 credits. Of course, you'd get a trade-in for your ship and for the extras, leaving you with a few credits for new accessories. So, you want one or what?
I think drawing on the experience of buying a car was an inspired choice, and they definitely have some fun with it. You can pretty easily draw a straight line from this to what Star Citizen has become.
You know you've got 42 cubic meters to pack full of profit. We're talking pressurized and shock-resistant construction, so whatever you put in here comes out the same way.
Which leaves a bit of a bad aftertaste, but we can't hold that against this game. What I can hold against it is what's missing. At the end of his sales pitch, he quoted a price. And that's useful information. I just have one question. Why am I only hearing about it now? If you think all the way back to the start of our journey, he told me this.
Let's look at the facts. You know the retail of this ship. I can use your ship for trade-in, plus your extras. Including your cash on hand, that still leaves you short.
But, no, actually, I didn't know because he never told me. The only in-game way to see the price of a ship is to listen to the end of the sales pitch, but he won't give you the pitch unless you already have enough money, making it pretty tough to know what to shoot for. You can find the prices of each of the 3 buyable ships in the game's reference guide, but even then it's not so simple, because as he mentioned, you're not shooting for the actual credit value of the ship, because you have to factor in the trade-in value of your current ship plus all of its upgrades. But how much are you getting for all that stuff? The whole process happens invisibly in the background, so there's no way to know without painstakingly tallying up all your assets ahead of time and comparing it to what you have after the transaction. And are we getting full price for our stuff, or is it getting marked down like it does when you sell it in the upgrades room? And for that matter, how much is the Tarsus worth? You won't find that kind of information anywhere in the reference guide or the manual. And it's important to know, because when you buy a ship, it comes without any upgrades at all except for a jump drive if you had one, which means if you had just enough money for the ship but nothing else, you're going to be leaving port without any shields, armor, or weapons of any kind, which is another one of those dead man walking scenarios. The whole process is needlessly clunky and convoluted, all because they hide information that anyone who is actually in this situation should have ready access to. I've never had the pleasure, so for all I know, this could be an accurate depiction of what it's like to walk into a car dealership. But even if so, is it really worth replicating that experience in a video game? But alright, now that I've got the credits to buy a new ship and have enough left over to equip it with the essentials, let's take a closer look. Coming in at 75,000 credits, the Orion is by far the cheapest of the available ships, and thus the obvious choice for a first upgrade. In comparison to the other 2 ships, the Orion's role is as a jack of all trades, with a decently sized cargo hold and pretty good combat capabilities without going all the way in on either. But hey, when you only have the Tarsus to compare to, everything about this ship is premium shit. Just look at the cockpit. I can actually see out of it now. Plus, there are 2 multifunction displays, You end up having to do a lot of fiddling with these in order to see the distance to your destination, the status of your target, the state of your ship, and so on, so being able to have 2 different screens up at once is a pretty nice quality of life upgrade. The one bad thing I'll say about the Orion is that its armor plating, which is supposed to be its specialty, ends up being kind of useless. Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't lying. It does have over twice as much armor as the next toughest ship. It's just that it's not going to be of much help most of the time due to the way the damage system works. Yeah, so just like previous games in the series, the components on your ship can be damaged when you get hit. Unlike previous games in the series, this happens even when taking hits to your armor, with some rather unfortunate results. This change is partially understandable. You have so much more armor in this game than you did in the other ones, they had to do something, otherwise your systems would just never take any damage. However, they got the balance all wrong. You've got your usual suspects like your generators, shields, and thrusters, which affect your energy levels, shield regeneration, and top speed respectively, but one notable addition is the maneuvering jets, which affect the rate at which you can turn in various directions. The thing is, in a dogfight, your ability to turn is tantamount to your ability to win. If your maneuvering jets get seriously damaged during a fight, you are not going to win that fight, or any subsequent fights. Period. At that point, your only option is to run away. But not so fast. If your engines or afterburners are damaged to the point where you can't outrun your assailant, then, well, you're out of options. I guess you could choose whether to wait patiently for the sweet release of death or just hit the self-destruct button and get it over with. This wouldn't necessarily be a problem if having your systems get damaged like that was a rare occurrence, but sadly, it's not. The rate at which your systems take damage is extremely high. It doesn't seem so bad when you're flying the Tarsus. Your systems don't all break down at once until your armor's nearly gone, which seems appropriate. The problem is that the rate at which the components are damaged doesn't seem to scale up as you gain more armor, so the Orion may have nearly 5 times as much armor as the Tarsus, but it could only take a Tarsus hull's worth of damage before it's crippled beyond use. The good news is that you could take a lot more hits. The bad news is that the first few hits guarantee the rest. Those of you who have played the game may note that there is a way to partially alleviate this issue, but that requires buying an expensive upgrade that I can't afford right now, so just hold your horses, okay? For now, there's another notable property of the Orion that happens to be the most relevant one to me at this particular moment. See, when the rep said it was slow, he was actually underselling it by a lot. Really, that's no way to talk about the second fastest player ship in the game. This baby can hit 800 kps when you use the afterburners, which is a hell of a lot better than the Tarsus' 600, and more importantly, is enough to outrun almost any other ship you might encounter, including those pesky cops from earlier. You may be wondering how, considering that I said the Stiletto was the fastest human ship, and it is. The thing is, the Confederation is stupid and has outfitted its ships poorly, giving them more shielding than their engines can handle, so while they do have an extremely high top speed, they can only maintain it for a few seconds at a time before they have to recharge. Meanwhile, I'm just cruising. Easy peasy. I decided to put my ill-gotten gains toward a Hunter AW6I, otherwise known as the mid-budget radar option, so I can finally see who's attacking me by their IFF colors. Radars are one of the few upgrades that persist between ships, so we can think of it as a long-term investment. On the way back to Oakham, the pirates attacked me. Didn't Taylor said they would leave me alone as long as I'm on her payroll? Well, because the mission technically ended when I landed on Hector, there's no mission script to tell them to chill out for my return trip. It's a particularly immersion-breaking bit of jank, but more importantly, a really annoying one, considering that it results in them attacking you in an asteroid field. You guys really want to do this here? What a pain.
You took your sweet time, Captain.
Better late than never. Now I want my money and info on the artifact.
I won't say anything that will tip my hand prematurely, but I can tell you that Sandoval got it by killing its previous owner. Before that, a spice merchant named Dieter obtained it from his own father. Death follows this thing. Feel lucky?
Just give me my next mission and let me worry about my health.
The next mission is just like the last one, only now we're taking the Brilliance to some place called New Constantinople. Taylor mentions that she spread a bunch of bribe money around, but it doesn't seem to have done much considering we get made again.
Contraband detected. Target offender and fire at will.
But just like last time, our fancy new ship can just speed on past them, no problem. Turns out New Constantinople is kind of a big deal. It's a massive space station city that serves as the capital of the Gemini sector and another one of those unique bases. We're not being paid to lounge around though, so it's back to Taylor, dodging her pirates on the way in again.
If you know the artifact's value, why don't you want it for yourself?
You'll have to kill a lot of people to hang on to it, and I'm no murderer. Anyway, I'll tell you all I know about that thing after you finish this last job.
Let me guess. I'm running a shipment of catnip to Kill Ra.
Nope, I saved the really lucrative jobs for myself. Actually, you're running more brilliance to New Constantinople. It pays 10,000 credits.
To hell with that. Those confeds were all over me.
Well, I've got an idea which will help prevent that this time out. But I'm sick of holding your hand while you whine. You want the job or not?
Okay, what's this great idea of yours?
I've gone over the schematics of your ship. I've located a space where we can install a secret compartment. It'll be completely undetectable and make smuggling much easier.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Just make the damn run.
The secret compartment actually does work. As long as whatever contraband you have doesn't exceed its capacity, you can get off scot-free, and it's a permanent upgrade, magically following you to any future ships you buy, which is appreciated. Alright, this should be the easiest one yet.
Where the hell do you think you're going? Hold on, mister. I think it's high time we were introduced, don't you? My name is William Riordan.
Riordan, buddy, I'd love to talk to you, but in case you haven't noticed, we're in a goddamn asteroid field. Could you maybe call back at a better time?
You take over my route, fly for Taylor, and then have the gall to insult me. There's not enough work for 2 privateers. I'll teach you to steal my business.
The radio is interesting, in theory. A system like this has a lot of potential, which sadly goes mostly unrealized. There are precious few conversations like this in the game, and the dialogue options you choose don't matter in any of them. Regardless of what you say or do, Riordan will attack. This is a bit of a problem, because in addition to his considerably powerful ship, he's got a lot of help. Enough that I don't stand a chance in hell of beating them or surviving the jump out. Yeah, see, I bought this ship for its speed, so when it came time to outfit it for combat, I kinda skimped on the parts, leaving it at roughly the same capabilities as the Tarsus. That's clearly not enough. Guess it's back to the grindstone, but I'm not gonna do it the way I've been doing it up to now. This seems like a good opportunity to try out the side of the game that I've been neglecting up to now. Let's give this whole space trading thing a shot. Just like in Elite and Sundog, every base you land on has a commodity exchange where you could buy or sell various goods, and the idea is that you could buy them where they're cheap and then go find someplace where they're valued higher to sell them. But how do you know what the best trade routes are? Good question. If all you have is the game, and I'm including the manual in that, you don't. The best you can do is just go to different places and make a note of what things sell for. Prices fluctuate, but it's within a pretty narrow range for most goods. You'll never know if you found the best deal this way, but you can at least find a profitable one, technically. When I first played this game, I tried a few things, like buying a load of wood on an agricultural world and selling it at a mine, which is one of the things the manual recommends doing. And the profit margins were so laughably low that I ended up concluding that the whole system was a waste of time. Yeah, there must be more profitable routes out there, I reasoned, but the amount of effort required to find them would be astronomical. And that does seem to be the consensus online. The amount of money you can make from trading is just far too low relative to the amount of time it takes to do it. What I did see people doing was treating it as a side hustle. If a mission takes you to a particular place and you happen to know which goods are valued there, you could stock up before you leave. And this is probably the most practical way to treat the trading system. The problem is that in order to be able to just happen to know that information, you would need to have a vast amount of information about this game already stored away in your brain, the likes of which you could only get from spending a lot of time playing it. At this particular moment in my playthrough, I did not just happen to know, and by the time I did, I already had more credits than I knew what to do with, rendering the whole thing moot. You know what might have helped here is if you could look at the map when you're at the commodity exchange. You know, take a look at what kind of planets are around your destination. That would have made planning out your trips a lot easier. Oh well. But let's not forget, I set out to make some money with this trading system, and I fully intend to do just that. We've looked at it from the perspective of a newcomer, as well as that of an intermediate and advanced player, but there's still one more I think we should consider. That of the statistics-poisoned, wiki-brained metagamer. Even at the time, there was a way to see a table of every trade good's worth on every base type through the Playtester's Guide, which is an interesting artifact of history. However, even having all of this information doesn't necessarily help you find the optimal route, at least not when presented this way. So, hypothetically, if one were to make a spreadsheet out of all these values, they could then calculate the profit margins for taking each good on each potential route. One could then see at a glance which routes are the most profitable, but nobody would do that. That would be crazy. So, it turns out, purely looking at the numbers and trying not to break the law, the most profitable loop by far is to pick up gems and plutonium on mining bases and take them to a refinery, where you can load up on robot workers and medical equipment to take back to the mine. I think the intention was for you to do multi-stage loops where you visit multiple planets in sequence, but they kind of forgot the part where that needs to be more efficient than just ping-ponging back and forth between two of them forever. But this spreadsheet doesn't tell the whole story. There's other factors to consider, like distance, specifically the number of jump points on your route. These things are the trader's worst enemy. Even in the best case, they represent a lot of wasted time watching all those autopiloted jumping cutscenes, and time is money. In the worst case, they have the potential to scrap a run. If you run into enemies anywhere else, you can safely outrun them. But at jump points, there's always a chance you might not make it. The ideal trade route would be a mine and a refinery right next to each other in the same system. The developers did think of this, which is why there's no such thing. So what's the next best thing that does exist? Well, there is at least one system with an agricultural planet next to a refinery, so you could run wood and food to the refinery and take some home appliances back to the ag planet. How bad could it be? Well, I tried it out a few times, and I got an average of around 1,500 credits from selling a load of wood and 700 for the home appliances. Each run took me around a minute and 20 seconds, but my buying and selling tech was maybe not the best, so there's a lot of room for improvement there. So for the sake of convenience, let's just say a run can be completed in a minute. Averaging that all out, I'm making about 1,200 credits per minute, which if we consider that my triple stacked cargo mission to New Detroit took 8 minutes to make about 36,000 credits, or 4,500 credits per minute, seems kinda bad. But you have to consider that that was a lucky break. You don't see 3 missions with the same destination every day. So if we peg the value of a single cargo mission at 1,500 credits per minute, trading doesn't seem so bad, especially since those missions carry with them the risk of a failed run, wasting precious time. This local trading scheme has no risk whatsoever. Even in the unlikely event that you run into an enemy, you can just boost past them into the auto landing zone. There's room for improvement too. The Orion has 50 units of cargo space, and I forgot that you could buy a cargo extension upgrade to add an additional 25 units. Although at that point, you run into the limit of how many of a given good the planet has for sale, which is usually not that much more than 50, at which point you would have to start buying other, much less profitable goods to fill your cargo bay. So it wouldn't have made that much of a difference. The only problem with all of this is that it's the most profoundly boring thing I've done in a video game in a very long time. Looking at the footage I recorded reveals that I spent less than 10 minutes on this, but at the time it felt like an hour. But that's just what you gotta do to get ahead, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe I just have to accept a little risk and I'll be rewarded. I considered trying to find the shortest route between a refinery and a mining base, but I figured if I'm going to have to use a jump point anyway, I might as well crank the risk all the way up and try my hand at smuggling. For real this time. I happen to know that there's a pirate base hidden in the conspicuously named Sherwood system, which neighbors a system with multiple refineries in it. People online seem to be under the impression that the best place to sell contraband is a pleasure planet, and I can see the logic there. Where else would you go to unload your drugs than Space Vegas? But if you look at the data, you can see that you'll get much better prices for both drugs and slaves from refineries or mining bases. Pleasure planets are actually kind of useless. They don't buy anything at particularly high prices and they produce nothing of value. Ultimate and slaves, both sold by pirate bases, are the most profitable goods in the game when sold at refineries, and the advanced fuels, holographics, whatever those are supposed to be, and medical equipment that you can get on refineries aren't half bad when sold to pirates. But yeah, buy the drugs and or slaves, dodge the asteroids, make the jump, and outrun the cops. Getting caught doesn't actually add any risk to the run, since the patrols don't hang around the Sherwood side of the jump point, where you're vulnerable, but they do waste time, since you have to boost past them in real time instead of using the autopilot. Runtime varies between 3 and 4.5 minutes, since going back to the pirates doesn't involve any contraband, so you don't have to spend time running from the cops, and you know what? I'll spare you the details and just say it makes around 2,300 credits per minute, which is pretty good. Although that is kind of a generous estimate because, well, another thing the spreadsheet doesn't tell you is that in addition to price fluctuations, goods can vary in availability. Sometimes you'll show up and the goods you wanted just aren't there, or there are barely any in stock. Goods vary in their variability, with some staple items like wood being pretty much always available, while others are a bit less reliable. Others, like ultimate, slaves, medical equipment, and advanced fuels in my experience. You know, the pirate stuff I get, but advanced fuels? I mean, who would expect to find those at a refinery, right? Still, it may have some risk and variability, but it's still more stable than doing missions, so it's like a middle ground solution. Although, we could do better. We're still just dipping our toes in here. If we want to truly embrace the Sigma grind set, we're not flying the right ship.
Checking out the Galaxy-class merchant ship? Good choice. She's not as flashy as some ships, but she sure is practical. You get a roomy cockpit, loads of cargo space, and you can add top and bottom turrets if you feel you need more firepower. Did I mention she's a fast ship as merchant vessels go? No? Listen, if you can't afford a drayman, and who the hell can these days, you'll find the Galaxy fills your shipping needs. And it's a steal at only $150,000.
This baby comes stock with 3 times the usual cargo capacity at 150 units, and if you buy the cargo extension, it becomes a whopping 225. The guy said it was fast, but that's for a transport. It's actually the slowest of the buyable ships, although it's not that bad, coming in at 750 kps compared to the Orion's 800. But that's not all. Kinda. It's got turrets. Both of the other buyable ships can fit a rear turret, but this one has fittings for a top and bottom turret. If they could track and shoot things independently while you're flying like they could in Wing Commander 2, that would be a pretty useful feature. Too bad they can't. It's all manual all the time in the Gemini sector. If you look to the left, you can see an empty co-pilot seat, so maybe things would be different if Grayson had any friends. Speaking of things that are different from Wing Commander 2, the turrets no longer have their own independent energy supply, so you can't use one up and then switch to the other and keep shooting, because it's all coming from the same place. Considering that was the best reason to manually use turrets in Wing 2, I'm not really sure why you would bother with them in this game. But that's all a distraction anyway. I'm not even gonna bother putting guns on this thing, because I need the money to buy product. I'm going for the drugs and slaves, of course, because we're looking to achieve maximum profit. The reason why Ultimate and Slaves are so profitable is that they're very high value items, which doesn't really matter all that much when we're talking about a 50 unit cargo hold. But with 200 plus units, you start having to think about whether you have enough cash on hand for a pretty substantial buy-in. At least, in theory, you could never actually fill your entire hold up with this stuff, right? Well, it turns out there is a way. See, they don't bother to save the RNG seed or the state of the commodities market anywhere, so if you take off and land again, or better yet, just make a save and immediately reload it, you can re-roll and restock the commodities. This also works for the mission boards, by the way. Normally, I would not recommend abusing this, although I will admit to having dabbled in it a couple times when I was particularly fed up with the game, but that's irrelevant. We're not here to have fun, we're here to make money. You may not like it, but this is peak trading performance. It took a few partial runs before I could afford the 200,000 credits required for a hold full of contraband, but before long I was running a well-oiled machine, making a cool 8,500 credits per minute.
Impressive. Very nice.
Probably the single most profitable way to spend your time in this game. But now that I've achieved this, it does prompt me to ask the question, to what end? The only use for credits is to buy ships and upgrades, but we're already fully optimized here. Where else is there to go? Back to a combat-focused ship? If you have the, let's say, around 350,000 credits it takes to buy and outfit a galaxy, you could have just spent that on one of those instead and been 90% of the way to maxing that out already. It all seems kinda pointless. Although, there is a way to make it make sense. The base game may not have anywhere to go from here, but the expansion pack, Righteous Fire, does have a host of very, very expensive new upgrades to buy. This would be the fastest way to get to them, although you gotta ask yourself, even if it'll get you the goods sooner, is this really how you want to go about it? Is this really how you want to spend your time in this video game? I'm just gonna come out and say it. Trading in Privateer sucks. With enough meta knowledge, you may be able to use it to make some credits, but you'll have a significantly harder time having any fun while you do it. The problem is that the incentives are all wrong. Ideally, the game should be pushing you to get out there and explore the galaxy, chasing down deals to buy and suckers to sell to. In practice, you're incentivized to find a route you're happy with and then just start running it, again and again and again until you're satisfied. There's no concept of regional prices or exclusive goods to push you to trade over long distances. A mining base in Humboldt Quadrant sells all the same things at the same prices as its counterparts in Clark Quadrant, so there's nothing stopping the shortest trade routes from being the most profitable ones. There's no seasonal variance or changing trends or resource exhaustion to encourage you to move on from a route. You can just keep doing it until your brain leaks out of your ears. After pretty thoroughly examining a game that lacks them, I feel pretty confident in saying that a trading system needs at least some of those things to be good. The bulletin board missions may be pretty simple, but they do at least encourage you, by their random nature, to go to different places and do different things. That's all it takes. But wait, there's one last way to make money. It looks like you're making a big payday when you sell your commodities, until you remember that you had to buy all that stuff, so you're really only getting a pretty slim profit margin. If only I could skip that part. What if I were to take someone else's stuff and disguise it as my own cargo? Ho ho ho, delightfully devilish, Burrows. So, sometimes when a ship is destroyed, it drops some of its cargo. But you can't just reach out and grab it. You need to buy this gizmo called a tractor beam that uses up a launcher slot, which is pretty prime real estate. What most people do is buy a turret and stick the tractor beam on that, which makes actually using it a massive pain in the ass. because you have to get close to the goods, then turn around so your turret can see it, then get in the turret, then get back in the driver's seat to make adjustments when you realize it's out of range or out of sight, and you know what, I'm just gonna put it on the front. I don't have time to deal with that crap, especially in the middle of a battle where all those goodies are liable to get caught in the crossfire if you don't get to them quickly. Now, if you're a goody two-shoes, you're unlikely to find much use for this thing, because the only ships that drop cargo to speak of are freighters belonging to the merchant faction, which you have no legitimate reason to beef with. There is one kind of object that even a law-abiding player will see around though, which is escape pods from many of the assholes who end up attacking you over the course of the story. If you collect them and then head to the nearest base, you can... Whoa! Slaves? What if I just wanted to rescue them or turn them over to the authorities? Luckily for us, things you pick up with the tractor beam don't turn into real cargo until you land, so we don't have to worry about getting scanned as long as we sell them right away, but the implications are kinda nuts. But a couple of slaves here and there are chump change anyway. If we want to make real money, we gotta steal in bulk, which is where those merchant freighters come in. And if we crack one open, we get... a frankly pathetic amount of cargo for our trouble. Okay, that took very little time to do, so if you found a spot with a good spawn rate for merchants, you could probably make a decent living this way, but picking on mostly defenseless merchants is almost as boring as trading. And even if you're not paying in credits, there's still a cost. Engaging in this kind of activity will, understandably, ruin your reputation with all of the lawful human factions in the Gemini sector.
You maniac! The guild will hear about this!
Which is quite simply not worth the trade. But if you really, truly don't give a damn about your bad reputation, I suppose you could just blow up any freighters you happen to come across while conducting whatever other business you have and then hoover up the goodies. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother with this stupid thing in the first place. Oh, and just so you're not confused, I didn't actually buy the Galaxy during my playthrough. Think of it as more of a thought experiment. If I had the credits for that, I would have just spent them on the upgrades I needed instead. So yeah, I made a modest amount using my trusty Orion and used it to buy some much needed combat gear. By the end of it all, I had got myself a pair of Mason blasters, which we'll call the mid-range gun solution, level 3 shields and engines, a repair droid, and a missile launcher. Missiles are, as you might expect, good for quickly and easily removing large chunks of an enemy ship's health, which is great for situations where you're outnumbered. On the other hand, they do have the interesting caveat that you have to pay for them, making them feel like a bit of a luxury expense when you're first starting out, and every credit matters. But as you get, richer, eventually the cost becomes negligible and you can fire them off with wild abandon. A launcher can hold up to 10 missiles of various types, which all come in at different prices. It's a bit of a false economy though, because in addition to being less convenient to use, the less expensive types also do less damage, so they're not actually that much more efficient than the more expensive ones when you look at them from a credits per damage perspective. The consensus seems to be that image recognition missiles are the way to go. If you really wanted to be thrifty, you could instead opt for a torpedo launcher. Proton torpedoes are dirt cheap and do more damage than any missile. The catch is that it's a dumbfire weapon, so hitting anything with it is a bit of an iffy proposition, what with the sprite-based renderer and all. It's great when it works though. Going back to those shield and engine upgrades for a minute, getting a shield upgrade above level 1 is interesting because it introduces a taste of X-Wing style power management. So higher level shields put more of a strain on your engines, but that's not the end of the story. If you ever find yourself in need of some extra juice, there's a button to lower your shield strength. So with level 3 shields, if you press it once, you'll revert to level 2 in both shield strength and power draw. Press it again to go to level 1, and one more time to turn them off completely. This adds a welcome bit of versatility to the system. Of course, you want the best shields you can get in most situations, but if you, say, need to use the afterburner for long periods at a time, you can sacrifice a little shield power to make that happen, or a lot if need be. I almost like this. There's just one problem. There's a shields down button, but there's no shields up button. If you shut your shields all the way off, you can cycle back around to the maximum level by pressing the button again, but by that point, the damage has already been done. Lowering your shield level limits the maximum strength of your shields, and it's not like X-Wing where they slowly bleed out. The effect is instant. This means that in order to increase your shield strength, you first need to turn them off and then wait for them to recharge from scratch, which takes a long time. Not exactly practical in a battle scenario. I don't know if they wanted to prevent players from managing their shields mid-fight, or they just didn't think about it, but it's a major pain in the ass. Just let me raise my shields, what's the harm? One interesting thing about how shield energy drain works is that it's based on the current state of your shields, not what level you have set. This means that if your shields have been depleted past a certain threshold by being shot at, you actually get more energy until your shields regenerate. This creates the opposite of the dynamic that existed in previous Wing Commanders, where losing shields would tank your energy regeneration and leave you unable to shoot continuously. I like it. It makes higher shield levels more viable than they'd otherwise be, and gives you a little extra something to work with in crisis situations to hopefully mount a comeback, which is always fun. The repair droid is one of the more important upgrades you could buy, and I probably should have gotten it sooner, to be honest. In previous Wing Commanders, your ship systems would slowly repair themselves over time, but in Privateer you gotta pay for the privilege. It's worth it though. Not only does it perform these in-flight repairs for free, thus eventually paying for itself, but it can save your life. If you ever find yourself barely surviving a fight by the skin of your teeth, or taking a pounding during a jump, if you don't have a repair droid, you're probably screwed. There's always a chance that you make it to your destination without being attacked again, but if anybody does show up, that's it, you're done. If you have the droid though, you can just walk it off. It'll repair anything that can be damaged except for your guns and armor plating, so it can get you back in fighting or running shape. What it can't do is help you in the context of a single battle. The repair rate is just too slow for that. And to be clear, I wouldn't want it to be faster. I don't think it would be good if you could negate the effects of the damage system. I just wish it was balanced in a more sane way, such that your ship isn't rendered helpless after losing less than a quarter of its effective HP. Problem alleviated, but not solved. But alright, I'm decked out and ready to go, and I still don't stand a chance against Riordan's ambush. That's just a lot of ships at once, you know? But those level 3 shields came in clutch and held out for just long enough to let me jump out, leaving Riordan to sit and stew. And the rest of the mission goes as easily as Taylor promised. The hidden compartment is mostly useless for its intended purpose, because while it does offer 20 units of scan-proof cargo, 20 units of drugs is nothing. You need to trade in bulk to make money. On the other hand, you could look at it as 20 extra units in addition to your usual cargo space, so not bad all things considered.
The person you need to talk to is Roman Lynch.
You mean the mob boss on New Constantinople?
He may be a thug, but he's also an expert on exotic and valuable items. I set up a meeting with Lynch. He's expecting you in the bar on New Constantinople.
Looking for work? Who isn't? Well, here's a suggestion. Take it or leave it. Ever heard of Roman Lynch? He runs a business empire out of New Constantinople. The guy has his fingers in almost every illegal operation in Gemini. Everyone worth messing with, that is. He's a hard man, and like all players, he'll screw you over if there's enough profit in it. But even so, there's a lot of money to be made from a guy like that, if you're careful.
Ever seen your lungs? I'll show them to you. Up close, like.
Ah, Captain. I've been expecting you. I am Roman Lynch.
Mr. Lynch, as you know, what we have to discuss is confidential.
Oh, you may speak freely around my assistant Miggs. He is exceedingly loyal.
Okay. As Taylor probably told you, I need information on an artifact. What it is, its history, and most of all, its value.
Of course. I have examined the holo your associate Taylor provided me. I believe I could shed some light on this mystery, given the right motivation. For example, there is a certain pilot who has caused me much professional embarrassment. Could you take care of him for me, Captain?
You must be joking. I'm no assassin.
You want I should take you outside the airlock and teach him how to suck vacuum?
Gentlemen, please let us remain professional. I only want you to find the man and deliver a personal message for me. Simply tell him how profoundly displeased and disappointed I am with him. Do this, and I will pay you 10,000 credits as well as investigate the artifact of yours. Agreed?
I say no, because that whole Riordan situation has me a little spooked. If that's the kind of opposition I'm expected to go up against, I'm gonna need a bigger boat. Or a faster one or something. But I'm sick of space trucking, and these upgrades have gotta be good for something, so I think I'll check out my local mercenary guild. Just like the Merchants Guild, they have a selection of missions that pay better than the ones on the mission computer, only with a focus on combat, meaning no cargo missions. There is one combat mission type I haven't talked about yet, and it is by far the most lucrative. Bounty hunting missions are a gamble of sorts. Your target is somewhere in the specified system or the neighboring ones. If you're lucky, you'll find them right away. If you're unlucky, you'll have to scour up to 2 additional systems to find them. Once you do, you are paid a comically large sum of money. You have at least a 1 in 3 chance of getting lucky, but even if you draw the short straw, it's not that bad. The trick is knowing that your target will always be hostile. So if you arrive at a nav point and there are no hostile ships around, you can immediately check it off and move on to the next one. If there are hostile ships, well, you've been told what you're looking for, so if it's someone else, hit the bricks. Otherwise, there's always a chance it could be some unlucky sap who just happens to fit the description, but more often than not, you're done. Bounty hunting is, in my opinion, the best way to make money in Privateer. It's probably not as profitable as peak trading, but it's gotta be at least in the same ballpark, and more importantly, it's fun. This is, at the end of the day, a Wing Commander game, and bounty missions let you do what comes naturally in a Wing Commander game, while getting paid quite handsomely for it. So I did a few, but with a specific focus. See, dealing with Taylor's schizophrenic henchmen got me thinking. Pirates are all over the Gemini sector, and they are a pain in the ass. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if they just chilled out a little? If I could only be on friendly terms with them. Not if it comes at the expense of my relationship with the authorities. That's probably more important, but are they really mutually exclusive? The faction and reputation system is, for most players, a bit of a black box. The manual doesn't cover it, and all you get in-game is this rather cryptic readout on your PDA, tucked away in the Finances section, almost like an afterthought. Where it lists the number of ships you've destroyed from each faction, there's a letter next to each one. H for hostile, N for neutral, and F for friendly. You just kinda have to intuit those. So there are factions, and you have a reputation with them. You may be wondering, what influences that? Does running drugs make you seem cool to the pirates or uncool to the feds? What if you get caught running drugs? Does that matter? Do mercenaries like it when you do missions for the Mercenary Guild? How about merchants and the Merchants Guild? The answer to all of the above questions is no. There is only one action you can take that has the potential to change those letters, and that is destroying ships. Under the hood, every ship type you can encounter has a set of point values assigned to it, determining what each faction thinks of you destroying it. For example, wasting a pirate Talon will give you 1 point with most of the other human factions, but -5 points with pirates, while taking out a Confederation capital ship will give you 25 points with pirates and Kilrathi, but similarly large negative values with the other human factions. The one to take note of for my purposes is the Retro Talon, the weakest ship in the game, but also the most beneficial to destroy. Everybody likes it when you kill retros, so if I made a vow not to kill any pirates from this point forward unless absolutely necessary, and take advantage of every available opportunity to kill retros, eventually the pirates will have no choice but to be my friend. As for how to accomplish that, well, an easy first step is to simply refuse to take any mission that asks you to kill pirates. There's plenty of Retro and Kilrathi threats in Potter Quadrant, so I shouldn't have much trouble finding work. Dealing with naturally occurring pirates out in the wild is a bit more difficult, but it's not like I'm a stranger to the idea of running away from things in this game. This is a bit of a long-term project. Not only do you start the game at negative 50 points with the pirates, but I also built up even more of a deficit by killing a bunch of them. Each retro is only worth 1 point, so it's gonna be a while. There is at least a way to see how much progress I'm making, if a bit indirectly, by talking to them. If you use the communicator on a random NPC ship, you get a list of things you can say to them. Some of them are taunts, but there are also more friendly sounding messages. When I first played the game, I messed around with these a bunch, but they didn't seem to have any noticeable effect, so I assumed they must just be there for flavor. This time, though, I looked into it, and to my surprise, you actually can use the radio to win friends and influence people. The way it works is, every NPC pilot has a disposition towards you that starts at whatever the value is for their faction, but can be influenced by your actions toward them, such as shooting at them or talking to them. So when you send a positive message to a hostile enemy, which in the case of pirates means begging for your life, it might not seem like anything has changed, but under the hood, their disposition has gone up by a little. So if you just keep doing it over and over again, eventually they'll tip over into neutral and stop attacking you.
I didn't see you and you're blind. Got it?
This is impractical as a defensive tactic most of the time and kind of tedious because sending a message closes the radio, so you have to go through the entire process of opening the radio, selecting your desired recipient, and sending the message every single time. Not to mention that it only applies to the individual recipient, so even if you convince one, their friends will happily continue trying to kill you until you repeat the process with them. Still though, it's neat that you can do it, and you can use it to gauge what a particular faction thinks of you. If you're close to neutral, it won't take as many messages to calm them down. Just in case you were wondering, you can go Mandarin and get on friendly terms with the Kilrathi by blowing up enough Confederation military ships to impress them, but pissing off the Confederation is bad for your health, and there's not much point when there aren't any Kilrathi bases to land on or NPCs to talk to. A few dead cats and many, many more frozen zealot corpses later, I've gotten enough credits for something that surely must be enough to take on the threats ahead.
I see you're looking at the Centurion. Hell of a ship. As you can see, the Centurion is a heavy fighter. Note the racks for 4 guns, 2 weapons, and of course, a rear turret. Beautiful, eh? Look at those hard edges, the aerodynamic sleekness. Did you know the Mercenaries Guild has endorsed the model 2069 as the best publicly available fighter? The Centurion is a real bargain, priced at 200,000 credits.
The Centurion is the most expensive ship in the game, so you would hope it would be the best one, and it certainly has some nice features. 4 gun slots. All the other ships can only mount 2. 2 launcher hardpoints. The Galaxy also has that, but you shouldn't be fighting anything in that anyway. Not only does it let you carry more missiles, but you can fire 2 of them in quick succession, which is enough to destroy weaker ships outright. Or you could mix and match with missile and torpedo launchers. The possibilities are endless. The more important feature to me is that it's fast, real fast. 1,000 kps with afterburners, which is enough to not only outrun any other ship in the game, but really leave them in the dust, allowing you to autopilot much sooner, or get to the jump point before they even know what's happening. Even without boosting, it can cruise at a cool 500 kps, which when combined with its small size makes it the only ship in the game fast and agile enough to dodge projectiles when surrounded, leading to a playstyle more familiar to veterans of the first 2 games. As far as weaknesses go, well, no, it's actually pretty decently armored. Certainly not as much as an Orion, but we've been over why that's not all it's cracked up to be. It has the standard 50 units of cargo space, only you can't buy the extension, so you won't be doing any serious trading in this thing. Weirdly, on the other hand, it's no less suited to cargo missions than any other ship, because if the cargo from a mission would go over your limit, it just overfills and it's fine. I don't really see why that would be necessary, but there it is. The biggest problem I have with the Centurion is a failure to meet its potential. It's those damn gun mounts. 4 guns at once sounds like a real party, but the Centurion has some trouble keeping up with those kinds of power demands. You can only shoot them a couple times before you're out of juice, making the standard 2 guns the more practical option in most cases. To give it the finishing touch, I put on 2 tachyon cannons, which are widely considered to be the best guns money can buy. There are more expensive guns that do more damage per shot, but they have a lower refire rate, resulting in a lower overall DPS. Oops. Tachyons also fare very well in the important damage per energy and projectile speed categories, making them an excellent all-around weapon. But alright, now I have the confidence I need to get involved with the mob.
You'll find Captain Selig in the Pentonville system. His ship is the Hooded Hawk. See that he gets my message.
He is he? Want to hear our response?
Selig, doesn't take kindly to the message.
Well, here it comes.
He's lost, I guess.
Pilot, I need you to make a very important delivery. All you need do is transport my load of weapons to the Siva agricultural planet in Rykel.
Despite the implications, running guns isn't actually illegal, so we have nothing to fear from the law. What we do have to fear are some very posh mercenaries who ambush us in an asteroid field as we arrive in Rykel.
I say, would you kindly identify yourself? I am Salman Kreutz, privateer extraordinaire. Terribly sorry to interrupt your flight, but it seems as we're a bit at odds here.
Why do you people keep doing that? Mercenaries, or hunters, depending on which screen you're on, are the faction meant to represent other people like us. Or one of the two, since you could also be a merchant, I suppose. The demon heavy fighters these ones happen to be flying are similar, but ultimately inferior to our own Centurion. They have a torpedo launcher, which is something to consider before you attempt to go jousting with them. It's worth noting that although they are much better armed and armored than the Talons and Drouthies we've been fighting up to this point, they're also much bigger targets, making them much easier for us and the asteroids to hit. Serves you right, dumbass. Turns out working with the mob is pretty profitable. Who knew? I decided to use some of that extra cash to buy the fanciest scanner available. Now I can see all the colors of the rainbow and use ITTS, which if you don't know stands for Inertial Targeting and Tracking System, and gives you a little cursor that estimates where you need to shoot to intercept your target given their current velocity, which is very helpful. But you have to remember to turn it on every single time you launch into space, which is very annoying.
Your find is of alien origin and as such virtually priceless, which also means the Confederation will want to keep it from private hands. To keep your possession of it secret, I've incurred additional expenses.
You want another favor, right?
Now he wants us to take his cousin, who is not wanted for murder. He has
a subpoena in a murder trial.
He makes that very clear off-world.
We know you are transporting a known felon. Prepare to die, criminal scum.
I'm feeling a little cocky, and when else am I going to get the excuse to fight Confederation ships? So I decide to take them on, which goes well, but that just triggers more of them to spawn, so time to split.
Steel yourself for bad news. Smythe, a man in my employ, found vital information regarding the artifact at the Oxford Library. Unfortunately, Mr. Smythe is currently trapped on a base in the Newcastle system. The authorities there, rife with corruption, have stopped me from exerting my influence.
I see. What kind of information?
Smythe has not communicated that, but I believe our best chance of identifying your find resides in the files at Oxford. Smythe has access to this information. I'll pay you 30,000 credits to retrieve this man. It's in our mutual interest after all. Deal? Smythe is on Liverpool, a small refinery in the Newcastle system. He'll be waiting for you there in the bar.
Look, why don't I just head for Oxford myself and locate the information?
Smythe is a data retrieval expert. You'd never find what you need alone.
Okay, I'll get him. But I hate to run off without giving Miggs a kiss. Where is he?
Miggs is currently eliminating a labor difficulty. I'll convey your regards.
Turns out Miggs is waiting in Newcastle, and the labor difficulty is us.
Hey, bright boy, guess who's in deep trouble? Mr. Lynch wants that artifact.
Maybe he should have picked a better ship than the Talon to do this with. Smythe never existed, or isn't at the bar anyway, and Lynch is nowhere to be found either, so our only remaining lead is Oxford. Guess we really should have just gone there in the first place, huh? Well, I tried, and as cool as it would have been, unfortunately it doesn't work.
I'm sorry, sir, but access to the Oxford Library files is restricted to students.
Look, couldn't I just buy a library card?
I'm afraid not. Good day to you, sir.
You must complete every single mission in its prescribed order, or you can't proceed.
I'm sorry, but library use is restricted to students and teachers only.
Yeah? What makes you think I'm not enrolled at Oxford?
Students don't generally conduct research while armed.
Okay, you got me there. I'm a privateer.
Sorry, access exceptions are only made for endowment sponsors.
Then how would I go about doing that? Making an endowment?
If you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Okay, maybe we could work a trade. I could fly for the university. Say, 4 runs at a reduced rate in exchange for access to your files, Mr.
Masterson. Yes, your offer might substitute for an endowment. You could start with an escort mission which pays 10,000 credits.
Forget it. What do I look like, a charity?
You're the one who brought this matter up. If you're not interested in working for Oxford, then don't waste my time. Back again, eh? You must need library access rather badly.
I always get a kick out of the things he says when you turn down a job. At the beginning, it's pretty reasonable, but as you get deeper into the story, the excuses get more and more ridiculous. This is partially on the developers committing to writing dialogue for the possibility of you turning down any job, no matter how absurd it would be, but it contributes to an overall theme of this guy just being really dumb, which I kinda love.
Good. Now listen. We need you to escort someone to Oxford. You will find him in the Oxford system in the vicinity of Nav 3. The man you are to escort here is named Hunter Toth.
Hunter Toth? He wrote that book. What was it?
Prometheus Unplugged. The Church of Man has marked him for death because of it. He's scheduled to give a commencement speech here, and he's already cashed the check. Unfortunately, the Church of Man has vowed he will never reach Oxford.
That's one vow those freaks will have to break. I'll bring him. Count on it.
Here we're introduced to a new objective type, exclusive to Masterson's missions. Escort was a staple of previous Wing Commander games, but they must have already been aware of how unpopular it was with players because it's kinda shoved into a corner and feels a bit half-assed in this game. Things start out like you'd expect, with us meeting in Draymond at the nav point, just like the old days.
Please tell me you're not here to kill me. Thank you, young man. I just hope we don't encounter any retros.
And would you be shocked to learn that his wish doesn't come true?
Hunter Toth, you are hereby sentenced to death for your heresy. The execution shall commence now.
They come in multiple waves, one after the other, making this a bit of an escalation in intensity compared to previous story missions, but at the end of the day, they are still just retros, so it's not that bad. Once the final one has been pacified, we're left with a bit of an awkward situation though. For some reason, the developers didn't bother to implement the feature from previous games where you could use the autopilot to fly in formation with your escort target, so you have no choice but to follow them in real time as they very slowly make their way towards their destination.
How's the going, friend? Business treating you well?
Or do you? There aren't any attacks after the first one, so maybe my job was done and I could have just gone back to Oxford after dusting the final retro. Of course, I had no way of knowing that at the time. When they finally got to the planet, I was expecting them to disappear or send a message or, give some kind of indication that the job was done. But, nope, you're left wondering whether you've met the conditions all the way up until you talk to Masterson again.
Forget it. I'm already tired of this deal, Mr. Masterson.
I see. A pity you'll never discover whatever you came here to learn. Ah well, higher education isn't for everyone.
For our next job, he wants us to take out the Black Rhombus, a Galaxy-class freighter operated by a crew of leftist pirates engaging in the worst kind of piracy of all. Copyright infringement.
Knowledge belongs to the galaxy, you fascist!
It's kind of a shame I have to kill all these guys, because it's undoing a bunch of the work I did to build my reputation with the pirates, but a job's a job. Thinking about it now, I probably could have just taken the Rhombus out and made a run for it, but in my defense, they dropped some cargo and I wanted to see what it was. But then half of it despawned before I could get to it anyway. Ah well.
Okay, Masterson, those pirates won't be hassling you again.
That will be a welcome change. How did you manage?
Right now, I'm more interested in getting into your stacks. Nothing personal.
Perhaps if you told me what you're looking for, I could find it for you. The fee for research is much lower than that required for private access.
I don't think so. This is private business.
Might there be a large sum of money involved?
Might you be looking for disability payments?
Really, you needn't be threatened that I've discovered your intent. People are always coming here to research one treasure or another. But enough of this. We have a shipment of rare and valuable books en route here. The ship bringing them in needs an escort. We'll pay you the usual 10,000 credits upon your return.
Sorry, pal. Books aren't exactly my speed.
Same story as before, only now it's mercs and demons instead of talons, which is a lot to deal with, actually. These story missions are starting to get serious, and they're not going to let up, which is why I'm becoming more and more convinced that the Centurion is not for me. Although they're priced at different amounts, the 3 buyable ships aren't really supposed to be upgrades over each other. They're more like specializations. Your overall effectiveness is more defined by the quality of the gear you've put on them, and if you wanted something that could be used as a rough measure of your power level, it would have to be the upgrade levels of your engines and shields, which define things like what weapons you can use and your effective HP. So what does it mean that the Orion can go 2 levels higher than the other ships? Well, I think it means I'm not as much of a Centurion fan as I am an Orion enjoyer. The speed and size are nice and all, but if you really want to take full advantage of the Centurion, you've got to make use of those 4 gun mounts. I said it can't keep them supplied with energy, and at its max engine level of 3, that is true. If you want to have shields to speak of. If you wanted to embrace a glass cannon lifestyle, you could turn your shields down to level 1, which would leave you with enough power to, well, not to spam them the way I like to be able to, but to use 4 guns with reasonable effectiveness. To do so would be to lean further into the conditions of the previous games in the series, of living on that knife's edge. No matter what, someone's going to die quickly. But I'm just not willing to do that. Maybe if I could turn my shields back up without having to shut them off every time, I'd consider it, but since that's not a possibility, I'd say the Orion is much better suited to my playstyle. And I gotta say, it's real comfy. Those level 5 shields can take a beating, and the level 5 engines let me just keep on shooting these tachyon cannons, which turned out to be just what the doctor ordered. And you know, now that I've reached the top of the tech tree, so to speak, it's finally time to revisit something I brought up way back at the start. In this playthrough, I opted not to do what felt natural and forced myself to leave the starting system early. But in my first playthrough, I stuck around Troy and its neighbors in the Humboldt quadrant, doing odd jobs until I had, maybe not the best stuff, but pretty close to it. And I very much doubt I'm alone on that. The thing about starting zones is that you're supposed to move on from them. In most games, it's not something you even need to think about. Before long, you've exhausted all the available content, or if any renewable content exists, it offers so little compensation in comparison to what can be found elsewhere that the choice to venture out into the wider world in search of greater challenges and greater rewards becomes obvious. The thing is, when they were making Privateer, they just kinda forgot about that last part. There are greater challenges. The Kilrathi make retros and pirates look like chumps. The rewards, though, aren't so great. Or rather, they're okay. The problem is that they're the same, everywhere. When the game generates a random mission, the payout appears to be almost entirely determined by the number of jumps you would have to take in order to reach the objective, which is not a bad thing to take into account. Time is money after all. What's missing from the equation is any consideration at all for where you're going or what you're actually up against. The end result being that you get paid the same amount to pick off lone retros in Troy as you do to fight Kilrathi fleets in a war zone at the Kilrathi Confed border. The incentive to leave the nest just isn't there. You could say, well then, simply leave of your own accord. And I did. This time. As an experienced player with knowledge of the extents of the game, I knew that I should, and that it would probably be fine to do so. But a new player isn't going to know any of that. All they have to go on is what the game gives them, and what the game is telling them is, nah, stay here, it's safe and profitable. It's just such an odd thing, like if the quest rewards in an RPG never increase beyond what you get for exterminating level 1 rats. You could go slay the dragon, but only if you really want to, because you won't get anything extra for it.
We have an incoming freighter.
Yeah, we know the drill. This time it's pirates again, which is kind of a letdown compared to the mercs from before. And with that, we've completed the last escort mission in the game. For as unpopular as these are, and as poorly implemented as they were in this game, I can see why there aren't any more of them, but given how little meaningful variety there is in the bulletin board missions, I would have liked to at least have the option of taking one on every once in a while. Too bad.
Skip the hearts and flowers. My library access?
Everything has been arranged, and here's your final payment of 10,000 credits. Good luck with that personal business. I hope you find what you're looking for.
If you can't read this minuscule text in one of the worst fonts I've ever seen, the gist is that there's this guy named Dr. Monkhouse who is the foremost authority on an ancient alien civilization known as the Steltech, and he's currently supervising an archaeological dig on the planet Palin. Well, there's our next lead. On the way, I noticed that mercenaries out and about are now hostile to me.
Killing you will put me in the black, Flyboy.
That's undoubtedly the result of all the demons I had to destroy to protect those books. One weakness of the reputation system is that it has no way of accounting for context. It doesn't matter that they were literally engaging in piracy. As far as the factions are concerned, I killed a dozen mercenaries and their dispositions have been adjusted accordingly. Well, at least the pirates love that shit.
Catch you on the next run. You're clear for clicks.
At long last, my dream of befriending them has been accomplished. But at what cost? And it's about to get a lot worse. There are a lot of mercs at Palin, and they're not just happy to see me.
Dr. Monkhouse, I presume.
Yes, you do. Greatly. I wish to be alone.
Sorry, Doc, but I didn't run the blockade just to be treated like a vacuum salesman. I need a favor. I understand you're an expert on alien antiquities?
That I am, but my consulting price is currently transportation off this rock.
Say no more. Climb into my ship and we're out of here.
Heavens no, not while the blockade is in effect. I shall sit tight until that unfortunate situation is ended. Should you wish to facilitate that circumstance, head for Basra. From what I understand, the resistance is centered there.
You here to sign up?
Sign up for what, Miss,
Miss Nothing. The name's Lynn Murphy. I go by Murphy.
Fine, Murphy. Look, all I want is to get down to Palin. I'm looking for, an old friend, and I can't get through.
Join the club. You get to cool your heels with the rest of us on Basra a while. Bronte Corporation has thrown up a blockade around Palin. Tough luck, but you could turn a nice profit if you're smart. There's 2 corporations in the Palin system, Rondell and Bronte. Bronte is responsible for the blockade. They want to block Rondell food exports, while kicking up their own to fill the void, stealing Rondell's market share. I'm organizing the resistance for Rondell from this base. Hired resistance.
Hey, if I'm gonna bang up against that blockade, might as well get paid for it.
Good. I got a mission right now. We've traced several jumps in system. They're Merc ships coming to reinforce the Bronte blockade. I want you to intercept them at Nav 1 of the Palin system and prevent them from joining the main group by any means necessary.
The reinforcements turn out to be a truly ridiculous number of demons. Sure, let's just keep digging, why not?
We've received a tip that a large scout patrol is approaching our base. They're probably just looking for the first reinforcement wing, but if they come across this base, they'll destroy it. We're not equipped to deal with an assault.
No can do, the downside's too steep. I think I'd do better against this blockade on my own.
At first, this seems like it's just going to be more demons.
No, it can't end like this.
But then the Centurion starts showing up. They're similar, but instead of the torpedo launcher, they have missiles and a rear turret with a really nasty dual tachyon setup, which can quickly mess you up if you stay behind them for too long. On the other hand, a Centurion viewed from the outside is quite large, making them even easier to hit than the demons. You never end up fighting any during the story, but you can find mercs out and about flying Orions. They don't seem to use them very well. With each mission featuring more combat than the last, you might find yourself asking, how are the controls holding up during all these intense battles? And thanks for asking, buddy. I was having a lot of trouble figuring out how to segue into this next part. You're a lifesaver. There are 3 distinct ways to control your ship. The first is with the arrow keys on your keyboard. Like usual, as a digital input map to an output that yearns for analog control, this is far from ideal. I will say that the generally lower turning speeds of the ships in this game compared to other Wing Commander games makes it easier to deal with at least. Then there's the mouse controls. Rather than the typical direct control setup you might expect, which is problematic for space sims due to the constant repositioning required to keep up with the demands of 360 degrees of freedom to turn combined with limited turn speed. These games use an interesting relative control scheme where you control an on-screen cursor which the ship turns to follow, almost like a virtual analog stick. Except in this game, there's no visible cursor. It still controls as if there is one, you just can't see it. With no feedback on where your stick is, I find this to be virtually unplayable. It's so bafflingly terrible, in fact, that I'm half convinced the cursor is supposed to be there but isn't because of some DOSBox shenanigans. But I have no way to determine that other than to ask you, the viewer, whether you remember there being a cursor there like there was in Wing Commander 2. Either way, it's no skin off my back because my preferred way of playing the game is the third, which is with an analog stick. It feels just like it does in the other games in the series, which is to say, pretty good for the time. One thing that sets Wing Commander apart from other space sims like X-Wing is that those other games often make you automatically roll into your turns as if you're flying a terrestrial plane, but in Wing Commander, a left turn is a left turn with no extra processing applied, giving it a crisp, direct, first-person shooter-like feel, which I enjoy. Although, speaking of rolling, there are a couple of minor ways in which this game controls a little worse than its predecessors, and one of them is that it's harder to roll. See, in previous games, all of the control schemes were active at once, but in this one, only one can be used at a time, which you can pick in the options menu. This is mostly fine, except that it includes the roll left and right keys, which are the only way to roll without the use of a modifier button that converts the inputs for turning into rolling, meaning there's no way to roll and turn at the same time. I find this modifier method to be obnoxious to the point that I just don't bother rolling most of the time. You don't ever need to roll, so it's a minor issue at the end of the day. If you're a long-time viewer, one thing you might be wondering is, sure, I'm using an analog stick, but what kind of stick? A thumbstick or a hand stick? 'Cause there's a bit of a rivalry going on between the two. Well, the answer is both, of course. I was switching back and forth regularly to compare the two, but also because sometimes I just couldn't be asked to drag these big chonkers out and plug them in every single time. When I got this full-size joystick, I made a prediction that if it was ever going to show any advantages over a gamepad, it wouldn't be in a DOS game, because these early games just don't sample your inputs at a high enough resolution for the difference in precision to matter, and that is held true until now. To my surprise, I found the full-size stick to give me a distinct advantage in this game, and by about halfway through my playthrough, I went to the trouble of dragging it out every time. Although it wasn't because the controls are better, but because of a very specific way in which they're worse. For whatever reason, this game seems to have a larger dead zone than the other ones, to the point where when using a thumbstick, I would find myself tilting it just a bit to try to go for a precise shot, only to get no movement because I was under the dead zone, then overcorrect and overshoot my target. My secret weapon for getting more out of thumbsticks, a focus aim modifier button to reduce the sensitivity, is ineffective here because the game applies its dead zone to the X and Y values separately, creating a cross-shaped dead zone, which is a big game development no-no. Always remember to vectorize your inputs, kids. This causes problems when trying to turn diagonally. Let's say the dead zone ignores any input below 10% deflection in any direction. If you tilt the stick 10% forward, you'll start pitching down at the slowest possible speed because you're setting the Y value to 10, but if you tilt it up and to the left by the same amount, you'll get a combined value of 10, but the individual X and Y values are 5 and thus ignored by the game. Or, actually, you'd need X and Y values of 7.5% to get a magnitude over 10%, but hopefully you get the point. The larger stick, with its wider area of articulation, is simply better at dealing with this problem. You can more easily feel it out and find the magic point where your input is large enough to be recognized by the game without overshooting your mark. It's not a very glamorous reason for the full stick to be better, but there it is. Unfortunately, Privateer doesn't have any kind of throttle support, so this thing is still useless. This is pretty disappointing when you consider that X-Wing, which released earlier the same year, did have throttle support. It was limited to 25% increments, which I'm not a fan of, but it was at least there in some form, showing that this game was behind the times in more ways than one. I do want to emphasize that you can play and enjoy this game with a gamepad, no problem. That's how I did it the first time, and I didn't feel like I was missing anything. The game does expect your analog input to be square rather than circular, which could be a problem depending on which remapping software you use, but other than that, it's fine.
Our attacks on Bronte's reinforcements have finally weakened the blockade. They're running low on fuel, food, patience, you name it. It's time to make the big push and break the blockade. If you'll throw in, I can provide a force of 2 militia Talons for your wing.
I can't speak for everyone, but I like kicking a guy when he's down.
2 Talons? That's it? Do they even want to break the blockade? Oh well, it's just more demons, only now we have some cannon fodder on our side.
If you'll transport me off this wretched world and get me to the Basra refinery base, I'll pay you 5,000 credits and help you identify your find.
You are entirely in our power. We know Monkhouse is aboard your craft. You will surrender him to us immediately or be destroyed.
Seems like everybody wants a piece of this action, even the cats. While I would love a chance to fight something other than mercs, there are so many of them that I think it's best to just make a break for it.
I've examined your artifact. A very interesting piece you have there, young man. Especially since I have one almost exactly like it.
Then you know what it is?
Ah yes, you said you knew nothing of the stealth tech. Well, long before men emerged on Earth, the stealth tech ruled an empire that spanned the galaxy. Even then, they were more technologically advanced than we are now. By the time their empire crumbled, they were possessed of wonders beyond our comprehension.
Is that so? Well, if they were so tough, What happened to them?
No one knows. Some say they perished in a civil war that lasted millennia. Others believe they simply grew weary of their power, surrendered it, and even now enjoy a simple, tranquil existence at the heart of the galaxy.
Nice fairy tale, Doc, but what about the artifact?
Here is my piece of it. Notice anything odd?
The markings.
Hold it up beside yours.
A map. God almighty, it's a treasure map!
Superficially, it also contains a complete set of the Steltec alphabet.
Who cares about that? What are we going to find at the spot indicated, Doc?
Who knows? The real question is, where do we go from here?
The sector on the map seems to be located on the edge of the frontier.
Bad luck indeed. That area is currently uncharted. Without the location of the sector's jump points, exploring the area will be nearly impossible.
Unless I enlist with the exploratory service in Ryganon. That way I could map the jump points and get paid for it at the same time.
Always the privateer, eh? Care you nothing for the possibility of scientific advancement.
You got it, Doc. Nothing. I'm in this for the profit.
Very well. I have no interest in baubles. You may keep my fragment and whatever treasure you find, so long as I get to publish any scientific finds. Agreed?
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. Before you go, I'll program your computer with the nav information from the map, as well as the Steltec alphabet. It may come in handy where you're going.
What? You think X marks the spot to a Steltec colony? You've been watching too many late-night hollows, Doc.
We shall see.
And hey, what do you know? We're right next to Ryganon already. At this point, I've killed enough mercs to piss off the Confederation and militia, so it's a good thing we're headed to the edge of civilization. I could use a place to hide out for a while.
Excuse me, I'm looking for Terran Cross.
You found her. So, you gonna slit my throat or just rob me?
Don't let my clothes fool you. They're a little rough, but times have been hard. Which leads me to the point. I'm looking for work.
And you heard the exploratory service takes anyone. Is that it? That's a misconception, I'm afraid. Our work is hazardous, yes, but not all our employees sport scars and pirate hats. The job requires brains as well as blasters.
I'm a privateer, believe me. I'm not looking for a handout, just a job. I have all the qualifications you're looking for. An eye for detail, a nose for trouble, and a butt that's never been kicked.
Suppose I'll have to check that out for myself later. Okay, if you want the job, you're in, on a per-mission basis. Right now I need someone for a potentially dangerous assignment. I'm in charge of charting maps for the sector. The ES has lost a number of ships in the Delta system, and through Jump Point Delta, which remains unexplored, could be a Kilrathi, a Singularity, or black magic, no one knows. But I'll pay you 10,000 credits to find out. You'll leave Ryganon, travel to the Delta system, and scout it through 4 nav points. The navigational info you'll need will be programmed in your nav computer. Basically, for charting purposes, you'll be flying a small loop, and standard nav points which make up the loop have been calculated. Simply hit all the nav points and return here safely, and we'll download what we need from your flight disk and pay you, of course.
Sounds pretty easy.
Easy? We've lost 3 vessels so far.
Yeah, but did those pilots have scars or pirate hats?
Neither.
Then get ready to strike "Here There Be Dragons" from your map, Ms. Cross.
So you're telling me I can find the Steltec ruins, advance humanity's knowledge of the galaxy, and get paid an absolutely pathetic amount relative to the length and danger of the missions? Yeah, there's absolutely no reason why anybody who doesn't have a vested interest in the uncharted systems should take this job. Oxford at least had the excuse of the payouts being at a reduced rate due to the endowment. This is just legitimately the worst job available to a pilot in the Gemini sector. The nav points are pre-placed, so charting unknown systems turns out to be a lot like doing a patrol, but in a system chock full of asteroid fields.
Should have stuck to your charts. It's dangerous out here.
Looks like what's been killing all the other pilots is pirates. Given my current reputation, killing them is probably purely helpful to me. If we look at the map after turning in the mission, we can see that the Delta system is now permanently part of our map. Neat.
This time you'll enter a completely unexplored region. I'll need you to launch from Ryganon. Pass through Delta to a new jump point, which you will use to jump to the uncharted system we've designated Beta. By the way, there's one more thing I need you to do on this run. One of my men, Captain Garovic, made the same run you're making. He never came back, so one of your objectives is to find him if you can.
Here we get a more complete picture of how Cross's missions are going to work. We chart a system and happen to find a jump point leading further in. Then the next mission has us charting that system, and so on, with the journey there and back becoming longer and more perilous each time. It's not an explicit part of the mission, but both of these systems have a very heavy Kilrathi presence, making it very likely that you'll run across random patrols of theirs on their way to and from your destination. In addition to Dralthis, which are looking very out of date at this point, they've also got Gothri heavy fighters, which are kind of like a worse Centurion, which is somewhat counterbalanced by the fact that you tend to encounter them in large groups. Much like the mercenary Centurions, they have a rear turret, but their dual Mason blaster loadout doesn't quite pack the same punch. It kinda seems like the cats are falling behind in the arms race, which might explain why they've developed an interest in the Steltech. We find Garovich in beta, but...
Damn you! Keep back! Stay away! You hear me? Back off! Alright, you asked for it.
I don't want to kill him, so I just continue mapping while he nips at my heels. Although his ship is fast enough to prevent me from losing him altogether, it's poorly configured, so I'm able to maintain enough distance to prevent him from being able to hit me.
Garovic was out of his mind, Terran. He fired on me for no reason. Whatever attacked his ship must have been so frightening it drove him mad. That's what bothers me. I can't believe the pirates did all this.
Which means there's a new player in the sector.
One tough enough to end the game. So, where do we go from here?
Keep exploring. What else can we do?
This time, the threat is the Kilrathi. I mean, they always were, if we're being honest, but now there are multiple waves of them. In an asteroid field, because it wouldn't be an uncharted system without at least one of those. They also have with them a Kamek corvette, the first and only capital ship you're required to fight in this game. It's possible to run into other Kameks as part of random combat missions involving Kilrathi, and the Confederation technically have two different types of cap ship, but there's no reason to fight them. Ideally, you'll have somehow known this was coming and packed a torpedo launcher, which makes short work of these things. If not, in keeping with the rest of the Kilrathi presence in this game, their weapons are surprisingly weak. Enough so that they can be outpaced by level 5 shield regeneration. So if you keep shooting, although it might at first seem like you're not making progress, persistence eventually pays off.
Kilrathi? What were they doing there?
They were flying an inverted V, the usual formation for a broad sector sweep.
But what could they be searching for, out here in the middle of nowhere?
You tell me. Why is the Confed interested in mapping this sector anyway?
I don't know. The top brass makes those decisions. I only implement them. If you're suggesting there's some kind of hidden agenda here...
All I'm saying is, if the Confed is out here looking for something, it makes sense that the Kilrathi would share their interest.
Jump to Delta Prime and hit the nav point we programmed in your computer. Afterwards, report back here for your pay. If it goes well, this will be the last run in this sector.
This time, there is no predetermined threat, just the fact that it's a long way to get where we're going. But at the end of the line, we finally find what we've been looking for. Landing on the derelict ship gives us a chance to save, but also a broken down fighter, which has on it a weapon which is somehow compatible with our ship. The Steltech gun is pretty good, but not as good as you'd think it would be given how much of a big deal is made of it.
My Steltech gun? My gun. My beautiful Steltech gun.
It does nearly twice as much damage per second as a tachyon cannon, but it also draws over twice as much power, meaning it's not actually any more efficient, and its effect can be reproduced by simply mounting two tachyons. Not exactly a revolution in arms technology. Still, though, it's uniquely suited to the Orion, which wants for gun slots but not energy production, so I won't turn my nose up at it. But alright, with our prize in hand, our next objective is to get back to civilization. By no means an easy task, but we made it here, didn't we? How bad could going the other way be? Oh. This thing is my new worst nightmare. It can't be damaged, even by my new Stealtech gun. It has 6 Stealtech guns of its own and moves at impossible speeds. Most importantly, it wants me, personally. If you manage to survive a jump, you might catch a moment of peace on the other side, but it likely won't be long before it finds you again. And when it does... Surviving the trip back is more a matter of luck than skill. Where and when it finds you is up to chance. You could make it through most of the journey unbothered, or it could show up at every nav point. If it finds you as you're arriving at a jump point, you have a chance, especially if there are other ships around. Although it has a particular interest in Grayson, it's also hostile to anyone else unlucky enough to be nearby, so it might get distracted long enough for you to escape. On the other hand, if you run into it alone as you come out of a jump point, you are almost certainly dead. Unless you're flying a Centurion, which can outrun it, making the whole thing a non-issue. But it's a little late for that now. I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later by looking at game facts that there is at least one thing you can do to get this thing off your back. Launch a missile at it, which will, for some reason, cause it to become distracted for a few seconds. Now, this doesn't make much sense. Missiles can't damage it, why would it be afraid of them? It's likely to be more of an oversight than a feature. The developers simply forgot to remove the default missile avoidance behavior. Regardless, you can use this to escape, provided you have enough missiles, which, you wouldn't. Unless you already knew ahead of time that there was going to be an invincible alien ship that you need to save all your missiles for before even starting the mission. A far more reasonable way to survive the trip back is to use cheats. Perhaps inspired by X-Wing, there are options available on the pause menu to make yourself invincible and give yourself infinite energy. Normally, this is just for messing around, as any missions you attempt with cheats on will automatically end in failure. However, it can help in this one case because the mission's already over. It technically ended when we landed on the derelict, so it's there if you need it. I didn't use it because I'm stubborn. Instead, I just kept trying until eventually, against all odds, I made it. There's no leads on what to do next, and killing all those Kilrathi has fixed up my rep with Confed and the militias, so I guess I'll head back to It's still there? Okay, fine. I know how to take a hint. It kinda leaves a bad taste in my mouth that they make a show of having multiple ships that are supposed to support different playstyles, only to turn around at the 11th hour and go, no, fuck you, get in the fighter, Shinji. The fact that this thing is nearly impossible to survive unless you have a specific ship is a major failing. They really should have implemented some other way of dealing with it that actually makes sense. Like, I don't know, maybe if you damage it enough it runs away to repair itself or shuts down and goes into an invincible hibernation state for a minute. Just something. What happens next is also not one of the game's finer moments. So we've got this thing hounding us wherever we go, and no leads on what to do about it. How do we figure out what to do next? Well, we don't, because there's nothing to figure out. Instead, what happens is, the next time we land on a mining base, it specifically has to be a mining base, there'll be someone at the bar. That's it. You're expected to just wander around aimlessly until you happen to visit a mining base and check the bar. No hints, no leads to follow, just pure happenstance. Why only mining bases? For some people, this stage of the game must have gone on for a long time.
I'm Captain Gooden, attaché to Admiral Terrell. We've been expecting you.
And yet no cake? I'm crushed. Excuse my flippancy, but it's not every day I have the honor of being arrested.
You're not under arrest, though we have all the evidence we need. What does the word smuggler mean to you?
It's an antonym for plausible deniability. Sorry, Cap, I won't say another word without my lawyer.
Relax. I'm only here to extend an invitation. You'll proceed to Perry Naval Base, where the Admiral will interview you personally.
Regarding...
Playing dumb, huh? Have it your way, then. We've traced a series of disappearing and destroyed ships to your movements. Looks like wherever you go, disaster follows. Tell me, are the Kilrathi paying you to test their secret weapon? Or do you merely keep the plunder?
I don't know what you're talking about, Cap.
Well, you'll have plenty of time to think about it, en route to Perry.
And if I don't want to go?
You don't have to. As I said, you're not under arrest. But something out there has the hots for you. Something nasty. And if you really don't know what it is, if you're as much in the dark as we are, maybe we can help each other out.
And before you ask, no, you can't just go to Perry before talking to Gooden, or even after talking to her but refusing her offer. You get turned away at the door by Gooden.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Just wandering around. Is there a problem?
There is if you try to go through that door. That's Admiral Terrell's office. He doesn't like visitors.
Hey, don't sweat it, sweetheart. I don't like visiting. Later.
But if they let us do that, then this couldn't happen.
Sinner, ready thyself for righteous retribution. We know you possess high-level alien devices, machines of damnable intent, for adding to the technological burden of mankind. The Church of Man condemns you. In the moments you have left to you, repent.
Now even the retros want to get involved. I've made it my policy to kill every retro I see, but this time we've got a party crasher, so I'll have to slip away just this once.
We don't have a lot of time, Privateer, so let's cut the niceties. I'm Admiral Terrell, and the Confederation needs your help.
Gooden accuses me of being a kitty collaborator, and now you want my help.
Yes, well, Gooden has always been a little overzealous in executing her orders. We know you're not responsible for the destruction of our fleet, at least not directly.
Then what exactly do you want from me?
For quite a while, we've suspected the Kilrathi of having a secret weapon. There could be no other explanation for the havoc being wreaked upon our forces. This was confirmed recently when, using the path of destruction as a baseline, we drew a correlation between that course and your flight path. That correlation approaches unity.
You mean the thing that's following me around is a Kilrathi secret weapon?
Yes, for some odd reason, the thing is locked on to you. Maybe it's a flaw in the targeting algorithms, who knows? The point is, wherever you go, it shows up eventually, and that's why we need your help.
Are we talking bait here, Admiral? I've been jumping like crazy trying to keep ahead of this thing, and now you want me to stand still?
It's not like I'm asking you to slit your wrists. Commodore Reisman has assembled an entire fleet. Even as we speak, they stand ready to destroy the Kilrathi Marauder. All they need is for you to lure it into the ambush.
An entire fleet, huh? So why doesn't that make me feel better?
I could force you to do this, but I won't. The way I see it, you can either cooperate and let the fleet blast it to Kingdom Come, or you can keep running the rest of your life. To sweeten the deal, we'll throw in 30,000. So, what'll it be?
Running has never been my style, Admiral. Deal me in.
Excellent. This should be the easiest mission you've ever flown. Simply fly to the ambush point at Blockade Point Tango, Nav 1. That's far enough away to minimize civilian casualties. Once there, all you have to do is kick back and wait. We'll do the rest.
I hope so, Admiral. I surely do hope so.
The Confeds still somehow think it's a Kilrathi weapon, and our hero is either too stupid or too conniving to correct them. I know which one my money's on. Just as we're about to jump to Blockade Point Tango, we come across something very interesting. Okay, I'm impressed.
Alien craft, information required. We are Steltech. You have technology belonging to us. You will tell us where you got technology. Now.
Do you know something about the thing we're ambushing?
Understood. Steltech drone. Keys of Steltech technology on your ship will pursue you until you are destroyed.
That death machine is one of yours?
Regrettable. When retreated from Galaxy, tried to eliminate all Steltech technology to bar developing races from finding our relics, bringing upon themselves the ruin we brought. However, or two pervasive pockets of technology, weapons, drones, remain. We eliminate these pockets when possible. Again, query. Where did you get technology?
I'd be stupid to tip my hand.
Again, query. Where did you get technology?
That information'll cost you.
Cost? For economics.
How about a trade?
We could energize weapon to destroy drone, but dispersal of Steltech technology in opposition to Steltech policy.
We deal, or I reveal this ship's location to more humans?
Not good.
You bet your butt not good.
Agreed. We'll attach our booster to your weapon. Now, booster will provide a limited number of shots to destroy drone. Agreed.
I guess we have a deal.
Power booster installed. Prepared for jump to derelict.
I gotta hand it to Grayson here. He's quicker-witted than I gave him credit for, but seemingly only when it involves his beloved.
My beautiful Steltech gun.
You're just in time for the massacre. Cut the chatter and listen. This is Admiral Reisman. We'll hit the thing as soon as it arrives. Hold your position until it does. And, feel free to join in. Reisman out.
Despite their unearned confidence, the fleet is really just here to distract the drone while we fight it, because our boosted Steltech gun is the only thing that can damage it. As we deal the final blow to the drone, the game's only cutscene other than the intro shows us the Steltech scout towing the derelict away. Then, provided we can get back to Perry Naval Base without dying to some random thing along the way, fuck! The story comes to a close.
Congratulations! That was some amazing flying. You took out that drone like a real pro. Ever consider a career in the military?
Yeah, once. But the fever broke and I got better.
You're an insubordinate smartass, and one of the best pilots I've ever seen. Just say the word, and an officer's commission is yours.
Appreciate it, but I'm not cut out for the military. I'm a privateer. There's a fortune waiting for me out there somewhere, and all I gotta do is smuggle, steal, and kill a lot of people to get it.
All right, but you're going to be awarded the Confederation Medal of Freedom, whether you like it or not. Understand?
Hey, far be it from me to screw up a photo op. I'll take it.
Okay, I'm sure you're headed for trouble, and I'm sure you probably deserve it. But I wish you good luck anyway. And if you ever change your mind about serving,
I'll have my head examined. Take care, Admiral.
And get a load of how they do the credits.
Oh, and one more thing.
What's that?
Privateer was developed at Origin Systems. The executive producer was Chris Roberts. The producer was R. Scott Russo. Aaron Roberts stepped in as the associate producer.
Yeah, great. But who programmed this baby?
Well, Ed Maurer was the lead programmer.
Equal parts dumb and clever, just like our hero. As for the story, well, is there even anything here to analyze? In a very large departure from Wing Commander 2, Privateer serves us up what can only be described as a video game story. There's no ambition whatsoever, no greater theme to be gleaned, no motivating factors beyond simple greed to care about, no character arcs to follow. It's just a chronicle of how the Gemini sector's dumbest privateer got a fancy gun. I guess the revelation that the Steltech just fucked off into space of their own volition and simply want to avoid letting their technology fall into the wrong hands is better than yet another ancient evil about to rise again. And, you know, it's fine. This, more than any other game in the series so far, is a gameplay-first dealio. What we needed was an excuse to get out there and
smuggle, steal, and kill a lot of people.
And that's just what we got. Besides, would we really be better off if this guy learned any lessons? This fucking guy?
Sorry, pal, books aren't exactly my speed.
I will admit there was one aspect of the story that did keep me on the edge of my seat, which was whatever insane shit was about to come out of Grayson's mouth next. He starts off fairly nondescript, but as the story goes on, some of the things you can get him to say, and even the stuff he says completely of his own volition, are just so funny. I'm not even sure if he's the one who changes, or if it's that he doesn't, and his inane one-liners just start to sound more and more ridiculous as the stakes are raised around him. It's genuinely difficult to tell if the writers were in on the joke or not, which just makes it even better. Grayson has 3 identifiable character traits. 1, he's greedy.
Care you nothing for the possibility of scientific advancement?
You got it, Doc. Nothing. I'm in this for the profit.
2, he doesn't like the military.
Sorry, but working with you military types makes me nervous. I'd rather tackle a monster than a bureaucracy.
And 3, he's downed catastrophic.
You worried about my pay? Or that I might leave without saying goodbye?
Believe me, if you had left without saying hello, I'd be delighted.
I'll handle things on my end. It's your end I'm concerned with.
Again with the cheap come-ons. How about a fat lip, mister?
Just like I promised, I've come back for my pay. And anything else you'd like to give me?
I never considered a swift kick in the butt an incentive, but have it your way.
The first 2 make sense for the kind of person who would be the main character of this particular game, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with that third one other than laugh at him.
Guess you've never seen a real man up close. I could arrange it, if you like.
Sure, if one comes by, let me know.
Grayson strikes me as the kind of guy whose reputation precedes him.
Could you tell me...
Excuse me, but I've got customers. Can't talk right now.
And then there's the case of Taryn Cross, who gets a bit of his trademark charm, but if you take some of her lines as they read, could be interpreted as her reciprocating somewhat. Only the voice actress reads them with such a flat affect that it comes across like she's just searching for the most efficient way to get through the conversation so she can stop talking to him sooner.
If I don't get this sector mapped real soon, the brass at HQ will have my rear.
Lucky brass. Any way I can beat them to it?
Maybe we'll discuss that after this next mission. This time you'll enter a completely unexplored region.
So, who can say? It's a very odd fit for a game like this, but I can't argue with the results. Gameplay-wise, I thought the story campaign was pretty good. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's the highlight of the game, which is a little odd, isn't it? The whole point of this game is the open world, but then the best part is actually the scripted story missions? But it's true. After I had flown the last mission and had the credits recited to me, I felt like I was pretty definitively done with the game, and I doubt I'm alone on that. The simple fact is there are no higher mountains to climb, no status to gain, and no more sights to see. A problem that open world games tend to have, you might even call it the defining problem of open world games, is that while they can provide a vast expanse for you to play around in, they can only fill it with so much unique content before you've exhausted it all. In Privateer's case, not only is the amount of content critically low, but the story takes you on a guided tour through pretty much all of it. I suppose I could stage an assault on Perry and see what those con-fed capital ships are made of, but that's about it. Nothing the procedurally generated missions can produce comes close to the challenge the multi-wave encounters in the story missions provides. I've already talked about the pathetically low ship variety with multiple entire factions consisting of a single ship, the same ship, and only 4 ships for the player is also a bummer. By the time you've reached the final quarter of the story, you're almost certain to have your ship of choice and all the upgrades you want for it. There's nothing to save your money for at that point. I should make one thing clear. Privateer is a very good game, maybe even a great one. I enjoyed almost all the time I put into it. But when I think back on it, and especially when I think about the highlights of the experience, this game feels a lot more like its linear story-based brethren than it probably should. The open world ends up feeling like a really elaborate suite of side activities that do a fantastic job of supporting the main event, but nothing more. It's not because the game does anything to make it subordinate, but because there's just not enough to it for it to be anything more. The potential is there, though. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. There simply isn't enough of it. This is a game that could really benefit from an iterative sequel. Imagine what they could do by building on the rock-solid foundations established by this game. No, imagine harder. Factions aren't fleshed out enough for you? Slap a few more ships on that bad boy. Stunted progression system got you down? Same solution. The Mercenary and Merchants Guild are a pretty good idea. What if they were more than just an idea? Like if you had to maintain your reputation with them and got perks for doing so. The manual calls the people who can give you jobs in bars fixers and makes it sound like they could potentially show up at any base, which is not how it works at all. But what if it was? What if you could talk to some random person and end up falling into a crazy adventure like you can in the Elder Scrolls? In and amongst more broader topics the bartenders can tell you about, there are more specific rumors about interesting people and oddities out in space. And every single last one of them ends up being covered by a story mission. But what if there really were things to find out there and people to talk to? I could go on and on. The point is, while Privateer is probably my favorite space sim out of the ones I've played so far, I can't accept calling it the greatest of all time. There's far too much unrealized potential. I refuse to believe that nobody has improved on it in the intervening 30 years. That's the reason for the confusing and slightly provocative title for this video. Wing Commander Privateer isn't the greatest space sim of all time. It's just the demo. Well, would you look at that, it's time for ports and versions. You wouldn't think there'd be much to say about this game, considering it only came out on one platform, but you'd be wrong. Only by a little, though. The original version of Wing Commander Privateer was released to the world in late 1993 and came on 6 floppy disks. This is not the version you've been seeing, but the only noticeable difference is the use of subtitles instead of voice acting, except for the intro cutscene, which gets special treatment. Old Grayson sounds a little different, though.
Sorry, boys, I'm just a tourist with a frag nav console. Could you tell me where I am?
Sorry, boys, I'm just a tourist with a frag nav console. Could you tell me where I am?
Not a chance, pal. Prepare to go to hell. No, it's just got a load of cargo in the hold and a load of bills to pay at home.
And I the same! You shouldn't kill me just for attacking you!
I don't mind that you tried to kill me, but protecting myself against your type gets expensive, and I'm on a budget.
Similarly to Wing Commander 2, Privateer launched alongside an optional $20 speech pack, which notably does not include any of the out-of-ship conversations that make up the vast majority of the yapping in this game. The 2 floppy disks that came on are nowhere near enough for that. Instead, what you got was most, but not all, of the radio messages you could receive while out in space.
Stick to established lanes for your own good.
These also sound different.
Stick to established lanes for your own good.
Your profile is clear to Sector's Edge.
Your profile is clear to Sector's Edge.
Killing you will put me in the black, Flyboy!
Killing you will put me in the black, Flyboy.
The conventional wisdom seems to be that the roles were recast between this and the CD version, but none of the acting before the CD version was credited, so there's no way to know for sure. To my ears, it sounds more like they got most of the same people back for another session and told them to try acting this time. By the way, that's some pretty deceptive marketing on the box considering what you actually get with this thing. And that's nothing. This French version is completely out of control, making it seem like the out-of-ship conversations are the whole point of the pack. One thing that caught my eye when doing research was this forum post. It could be helpful to temporarily disable speech while trading. The text-only version gave you a price list where you would compare prices to see if the offer was good, while the speech version just told you what you were offered and you had no reference to check. What are they talking about? You can't trade with NPCs, that's not a thing. Do they mean the commodity exchange? No, that's not any different. And then it occurred to me to check the ship dealer and get a load of this. When I was talking about how baffling it was that the game doesn't give you any information when buying a ship, well, in the original version, it did. The salesman tells you all the things I asked for. The price of the ship you're looking at, the trade-in value of your own ship, what you get for all your upgrades, and even what you'll have left over after the transaction. But it was all delivered as subtitled dialogue from the salesman. So when dubbing him, they had no way of dealing with this and didn't bother to come up with an alternative solution. Great! In 1994, Origin released an expansion pack named Righteous Fire, featuring a new story campaign, some very fancy and expensive new upgrades to buy, and a few new enemy ships, making for a slightly more dangerous Gemini sector, though not nearly enough to keep up with the power creep. I'd love to tell you more about it, but I'm keeping it out of the scope of this video in the interest of releasing it in a reasonable time frame, so maybe some other time. Later that year, Privateer's CD-ROM edition was released, bundling the base game with Righteous Fire and featuring full voice acting for all spoken dialogue in the game, including retakes of all the old lines with much better voice direction. Except for this guy for the intro.
And what is it, huh? Is it a smuggler far off the normal space lanes? Maybe a bad smuggler with some nice contraband.
He's still proudly going for whatever it is he's going for here. I can pretty confidently say this is the best version of the game, but it's not perfect. There's no way to have subtitles and voices on at the same time. You have to pick one or the other, which is an annoying choice that a lot of games for around this time seem to have made. The game has surprisingly good audio mixing, so I never had any trouble understanding what anybody was saying, but I'm not hard of hearing. You can get the subs back, including the ship dealers, by turning sound effects off, but it's all or nothing. There's no way to separate voices from the other sounds. At the end of the day, it's a minor issue for most people, though. This was the final version of the game to be made by Origin themselves, so it serves as the basis for the good old games release you could buy today, which works reasonably well out of the box. The game thankfully targets General MIDI for its music, so you don't need to mess around with any MT32 ROM files. But you do need to make some minor edits to the DOSBox configuration file to get it to display unblurred and in the correct aspect ratio, otherwise the image will be stretched.
Big chunks.
Which seems like something GOG could have just handled themselves, but oh well. To get an idea of how the game was received in its time, well, my go-to examples of old PC gaming magazines are Computer Gaming World and PC Gamer. But wouldn't you know it, the very first issue of PC Gamer didn't come out until a few months too late. So why don't we take a quick jaunt across the pond and sample what the British gaming press had to offer. With Computer and Video Games magazine's take on Privateer, and oh no, they gave it a mediocre review. Let's see, instead of blowing the Kilrathi scum out of the sky, you're freelance trader and mercenary out to make a quick buck. The graphics are a bit old-fashioned compared to other games. Okay, fair enough. Add to that no storyline. And combat which is about as exciting as watching paint dry. Alright, well, that is a matter of opinion, but maybe you could, elaborate? You know, use your words? No? Okay. The trouble with Privateer is the missions are fine, but they're not easy to find, and I wasn't aware of them until I'd stumbled across one by accident. The trading aspect prolongs the game a little bit, but it's all rather dull. If you want a similar game with a more depth, look no further than Frontier Elite 2. It's bigger, better, cheaper, and comes on only 2 floppies. So basically, this guy loaded the game up, stumbled around for 5 minutes without managing to find the mission computer or the guilds, did a single trading run, clicked around randomly until he found something resembling a mission, died or something, then immediately wrote this review as quickly as possible so he could get back to his full-time job of fellating Elite 2. But wait, you might say, how could they have missed that there's a story when they have like 8 screenshots of Masterson arranged in a grid? Well, I can almost guarantee these came from a press kit, which they couldn't even be bothered to crop properly. Extreme pettiness born from nationalism, or blatant pay-for-play? You be the judge. Computer and Video Games magazine, everybody. If we return to North America, where the games press took themselves a little more seriously, Computer Gaming World's Jeff James cautioned that Privateer has a difficult early game that might turn some people off, but enjoyed the game, citing the story and the freedom you have to enjoy it at your own pace as highlights, with only some technical issues such as poor hardware compatibility and high system requirements, alongside a bit of what he considered to be childish writing and character design as the only significant downsides. Players also liked the game, consistently voting it into the top 100 in CGW's reader polls, all the way up until 1996. The game seems to have sold quite well, at least initially, showing up in the top 10 games sold every month from September to November, at which point it dropped off the charts like a rock, never to return. I wonder what happened there. Anecdotally speaking, I can say that out of all the games in the Wing Commander series, Privateer was the only one to break containment and reveal itself to me as a teen. When crusty old farts were trying to convince me that their childhood was better than mine, it was specifically Privateer that came up repeatedly. In the end, not even Mark Hamill could match the power of an open-world space adventure. And I think that's what I'll leave you on. Or, well, that would be the end of the video, but there's one last thing. Just one more thing. There is a curious little oddity tucked away in the game's folder. If we take a look inside, it's mostly what you might expect. Various configuration and data files used by the game, but one of these files is not like the others. tabtni.vba contains text. Specifically the kind of text that is usually found in batch files. If you don't know what a batch file is, look it up. If you rename the extension to .bat and try to run it, you get a rather intriguing message. First, you have to give this file its rightful name. Okay, I'm not exactly sure how you're expected to figure this next part out, but if we cheat and take a peek inside the file, we can see that it's looking for advent.bat. Presumably for adventure, but shortened to fit within the 8-character limit for file names in DOS. Although, advent is only 6 characters, so shouldn't it be adventure? Whatever. If we run it now, it tells us to move it to an empty folder and run the command advent setup. Interesting. If we do that and run advent again, we get this. Art D's first batch adventure. Art D is
Arthur DiBianca,
one of the programmers on Privateer. And this is a text adventure game, like Zork, the game where you are likely to be eaten by a grue. Unlike Zork, though, this is not a compiled executable, it's still just a batch file, or batch files, I should say. That setup process created a bunch of additional batch files which all share names with the kinds of commands you might use in a text adventure, like the cardinal directions, examine, take, use, and so on. And indeed, the game tells you to use dir, the command for listing all the files in a folder, to get a list of commands you could use. So here we have a text adventure game that you play entirely through the DOS command prompt, which is kind of insane. I never would have thought something like this was possible, but I suppose where there's a conditional, there's a way. It's surprisingly full-featured, too. You can pick up items and put them in your inventory or drop them somewhere other than where you found them, and the game will keep track of where you left them. The actual content of the game is pretty basic. It's a sort of anachronistic, whimsical fantasy world, not unlike Zork. You need to find a series of magic words that, when said in a specific room, will teleport you to other places that contain items that'll help you find additional words. With the final word taking you to the ending, where you get yet another word, which it is said will come in handy in the next adventure. Yep, there are more of these. The second one came the next year with Righteous Fire, and a third one was hidden amongst the files of 1995's Wings of Glory, all worked on by one Art D, of course. I haven't played them, but I'm told they're significantly more ambitious than the first one. So, that's Art D's batch file adventure. Now we really are at the end of the video. A big thanks as always to my patrons, especially A Hanging Chad, Alarmed Response, Erica Simmons, Isaac Hampton, Jawmanthan, Julius BMT Koter, Justin Talbot, Leafy Jawa, Regular Casanova, Line Array, and Puke Skywalker, formerly 410,757,864,530 gay cops. Alright, as voted on by the patrons, the next video will be TIE Fighter. See you then.
Attention, please.
Huh?
Base Command has instructed me to notify you of a recent theft. Unknown persons have tampered with a spaceship registered under your name. Analysis has indicated that one cannon has been dismounted and taken. The stolen cannon is of an unregistered type.
They stole my Steltec gun? I don't believe it. Listen, Metal Man, I don't think you understand me. That gun represents blood, sweat, and money. It's irreplaceable. And you bozos let somebody walk off with it? This is outrageous. I paid my docking fee for actual security, not some bunch of tin idiots. I ought to blow you to bits right here. In fact...
Desist.